does not disturb, but reinforces the neighborhood around. Now, I'm here to speak first about two improvements to our area that can be made prior to accepting any final master plan for the park. These two upgrades are these. Number one, we would like to see the lighting along San Carlos Boulevard upgraded. Presently, the lighting is inadequate. It is much too dim. Sidewalks, as you walk from the square down, do not look inviting. We feel that the poles should be higher and the light fixtures should be substantially brighter. But invite members of the council to either drive or preferably to walk from the square to Nervous Nellies and simply look and see what you think. Do you feel safe walking down the sidewalk? And now, if you would consider, if you were a stranger, would you feel safe? Secondly, the town needs to evaluate the condition of the existing seawall at Bayside Park. If you own waterfront property of any kind, you need to maintain that property. And I would submit to you that the seawall at Park is in very poor condition. At the time when the original fountain was abandoned, it was abandoned because water leaked in from the seawall and destroyed the pumps that were there for the purpose of pumping water through the fountain. If the seawall were repaired, you could use the infrastructure that existed to rebuild a nice fountain in Bayside Park. Whether or not you decide to locate the fountain or not, the seawall must be maintained. I want to reemphasize before I stop here that all of these items can be done without having decided on a master plan for the park, and it could be done immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Were there any other comments that you had that you did enunciate this morning?
One of the things that we're
No, I want you to submit them to the clerk.
Yeah. We've got people that'll become speaking.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Peter Ennis.
Morning. My name is Peter Ennis. I'm one of the owners of Snug Harbor Waterfront Restaurant next to Nervous Nellies. I'm new to the beach. Was here about 30 years ago, but new to this part of it, I guess. Speaking of Bayside Park and like Len mentioned, the walk down, trying to make safety and make the park as easy, usable, and friendly to visitors and residents as possible. What I'd like to speak about is we're really in favor of a modular approach that would make the park flexible. Again, I'm new to this, so what I understand is there's not a lot of events at the park. So although the portable stage or the stage that was set up on the last meeting that you all had, I saw, you could see through it and see the water, but if there's not a lot of events, there's a portable bleachers and portable stage maybe make more sense. And where the gazebo is now, Len just mentioned about the seawall, and I believe it was in some of y'all's pictures from the last submitted drawing, was a grassy area, maybe from the seawall back 50 or 60 feet towards the street. Maybe it's sod, maybe it's some of the new AstroTurf. People could bring lawn chairs, people could bring blankets, sit on them. They'd have an open view out to the water to watch boats go by. The bleachers that could be portable could be put out like for the boat parade there night to set up for people to watch there. And the bleachers could be brought in if there was the event and set up with the back to the road, facing maybe a stage on the water or one, like that was mentioned before in your last meeting. We believe landscaping should be kept to a minimum. I know it was mentioned shade is very important. Between the two buildings, Nervous Nellies and Marina Village, there is quite a bit of shade throughout the year. especially in the afternoons when it is the hottest. One thing is that root intrusions of big trees, and I know there's no one here from the Harbor House, but the view from them was really, really important. Not block their view from their residences. We thought shades, as in sunshades, which I brought, sent some pictures around. Just obviously you've seen sunshades. I think you've talked about it at some of your downtown area. So something similar to that. Again, any stage should be portable. The bleachers make sense. Lastly, and I think this was mentioned before, that maybe decorative pavers of some type that matches what y'all's landscape ideas are, maybe from the sod, feature in the middle, or a fountain, or whatever area there is between there and the road. That's all I had in my part. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Nick Ruland.
Yes, good morning. My name's Nick Rule, and I'm from Snug Harbor Restaurant as well. My emphasis is on the lighting, number one. What I passed out to everyone is some examples of other civic space that's being used other places in the state, just for something to look back at. In the last week, I ran into a guy that from On-Site. That's who was part of the original streetscape and the original park, and he mentioned that at that time, that I don't know how many years ago that is, quite a few, but that at that time the lighting was set up because they weren't sure about the turtle regulation at the time. That's why they are so dim. He goes, that is long gone. I mean, as far as that regulation goes, for where we're actually located. So that might be one more thing that could all of a sudden, was there for a reason in the beginning, is I guess what I'm saying. It wasn't like it was overlooked, like like there was no light needed. It was just that's how it took place in the first part. So if you want to consider that part, and I don't know if you have On-Site as the consultants on this job. I don't know, but anyways, that might be something you want to confirm, of course, but that might allow the lighting into play a lot quicker. And I hate to see any money get wasted by the town or any business for that matter. So if you could take a look at that and see if it can be done fairly inexpensively compared to a whole remodel. Let's see. So I would really like to invite all of you down to come down, have an appetizer, a drink, whatever, and see the place at night. No, I can't buy you one because that'd probably be illegal. So I got no problem.
Could try.
I got no problem taking.
You can try.
Taking raise money. So. Anyways, that's pretty much it. But I think there's some things that could be done. Get going, and really would hate to see a whole lot of money being wasted, and we could accomplish things maybe in a more reasonable manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Laurie Russell.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Laurie Russell. I'm a resident of Fort Myers Beach, but I also have managed Marina Village for the last 4 years. So it's been a few months since we've been down here about the same situation. And first of all, it makes me very happy that all of us are pretty much on the same page as to what we'd love to see down in that area. I recently, yesterday, actually went up to Babcock Ranch. I'm sure you all are familiar with that. It's pretty cool. But they had a splash pad there. And I took a picture, but I'm going to forward you a couple of nice ones that I took in an email. It'll be on record as far as that goes. But it was very colorful. It was very clean. It actually sat on the water. So if I'm going to forward you photos of that. I think that's a really wonderful idea for that area where the old fountain used to be. And as Len said as well, I know that you tried to get something for the Veterans Memorial. You can also maybe build a smaller version of a monument there to fill in where the fountain was. But also, I thought it was pretty cool is if we create a walkway, which has been discussed for years, from Matanzas all the way down to Big M, and make it into an interactive memorial service. Modern, historical, and would also bring down a lot of people to this day and night. Think about how cool that would be. And that's it to my addition. Thank you.
Thank you. I was up at Babcock Ranch yesterday myself. I went past it. I was on the way to another farm.
Ann Lee.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is a change of subject. I'm Jan Lee. I have lived at Leonardo Arms, or have been going there since 1983. And for those that do not know it, it's at the south part of the island, 7400 Estero. The reason I'm here is we're so concerned about our beach erosion. I started in 83, as I said. I rented and I owned from 2000 in Building 2 that faces right toward the beach. I really have only seen 2 times that the surf was as close and as high as it was just 2 weeks ago with that storm. Up until then, most of the time we had about a 2-foot shelf of sand that would be high tide where the beach walkers would be. That destroyed that, and the surf was not only up to where our sea oats and our palm trees were, it went under our building. And it has flattened the sand to the point that we have no protection. I would estimate from my balcony that we have lost probably 50 feet of shore from building to surf. That, of course, equates to less square footage on the front of the beach. And not only am I concerned for Leonardo Arms owners, but all the beach walkers, and you all factor in, I think you probably know that at the south end of our condo complex, there is an easement from Bay Beach. This brings hundreds, probably even thousands of people more. In fact, I think it looks like Coney Island sometimes with all the beautiful umbrellas there. But it won't continue that way unless we have help. Factor in the tax dollars from not only our beach and Bay Beach. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but they want to, eventually build these high-rise or condos at the end of Bay Beach. Part of their advertising is that they have a parking lot there to have people come and park so they can also walk across the Estero to the easement and populate our beach. So I really feel I'm pleading and begging with you all to do something to restore and rebuild and then sustain our beach. I think it is urgent, and I think it is very necessary for the residents, the population of the South Fort Myers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Cheryl Noose.
I'm also a resident of Leonardo Arms, and I couldn't say it. She basically said the same thing I was going to say. It's urgent that something's done to our beach. We're losing it. That is why my husband and I came here and bought. We saw Leonardo. It was perfect. A lot of people in the condo feel that way. We don't want to see our beach washed away. So I'm not going to go on because Jan said everything I was going to say. I do have some pictures of what the damage looked like on our beach. And I truly don't think, I'm afraid it won't withstand another storm.
That'd be fine.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest to you, Leonardo Arms folks, that your board of directors makes contact with the town staff and get them together and start talking about this. And we'll see if we can move something along. I don't know what that promise is at this point, but that would be my suggestion. My suggestion would be for your board of directors, get in touch with our town staff here and have a meeting of some sort and discuss the matter, and then see if anything, what choices are available to be made. Maybe not with us, maybe not with you, maybe with some other group, who knows? And then work from there. And then eventually it would probably get back to us, and hopefully not too long. Welcome. Last one. That'd be fine. that'd be fine. Just stay informed. Amy?
Just so you know, there is an item on the agenda where staff is going to present about the beach renourishments.
Next?
Boyd, sand artist.
Hi, good morning. I grew up on this beach since 1979. I'm now a dual resident of Montana and Fort Myers. I'm here to talk about the historic value of the clock remaining where it is. I did some research on that. I know at the management meeting, you guys had pretty much agreed on we're going to try to blend in things, and I like Jim's point with bringing everybody together. I just have some numbers here I think that might open some clarity to this subject with the clock being there. I know sometimes it seems like a pain, but here's my numbers. These are from the records of RSW, Fort Myers Airport. Since the clock has stood, 143,829,000 people have flown in. Now, the people that got off the planes are 73 million. If you take a third of that number of being tourists, which is probably higher, all these numbers are lower, that's 24 million people, 413, that actually are tourists. And that's a light figure from the turn of the century. Even a third of those tourists that go to the beach, which is probably about half to more, that's 8,192,000. Those people, if you take a third of those and they went to Times Square, because that's where everybody takes pictures, and the clock, the pier, the beach, everybody loves that. Even if that 8 million people spent $20 on a $5 Dairy Queen cone and a t-shirt, $20, that's $163,842,000 over the turn of the century. Now, if you take a third of that and it's based just on the clock, 33%, 33.3 is the prevailing number here, but it's much higher because it doesn't include the people that drive in. Clock, when it was put up, is at a value of 17,842,401.75 for the city, the town of Fort Myers Beach. It's almost $1 million a year that clock's been standing there. That's the historic significance in a monetary way of showing it. And I like Jim's point of bringing everybody together on this. And I'm just here to talk about history of Fort Myers Beach. I grew up here since '79, and I understand the clock wasn't here back then when people drove through there. We did that whole thing. We just want to recognize that it's important.
Thank you very much. Next.
Bill Winter.
Good morning. Bill Winter,
Good morning.
a resident since 2004. Communication. Council members is very poor. Got communication with Mayor Murphy and Dan Ehlers. 4 envelopes put in a box for Mayor Murphy. August 2019. November 2019. December 2019 with 2 sheets put in it. May 20th. No response and no respect for taxpayer. And elders saw him verbally asking for a meeting. No response. Left him an envelope in his box. No response. A meeting. No respect for a taxpayer. Okay, number 2, traffic light at Times Square. This has been going on for years, abuse. To meet concrete media with the deputies, off-duty deputies. We need full-time deputies on this island when they're working. Do not need off-duty deputies that are supposed to be on the concrete median underneath the traffic light. Being paid $50 an hour, $35,000 a year. For what? You got 9 months. There's backups, and people crossing out, no problems. Like a donation. We're supposed to be on the concrete median underneath the traffic light. For years, council members overlook and ignore the job of the concrete media, the light. Not up to standards. I had a meeting with Roger, town manager, mayor, and myself, 1/29/2020. With Roger, myself, and how the job performance is being done. I also had a meeting with town manager Roger and myself, another meeting about the concrete media. Roger has to pay $35,000 through the council to the off-duty deputies. And to the country chief, Roger told me it should be deleted, and I agree. Can't work the concrete media at the traffic light by sitting in the patrol car up to 2 hours, $50 an hour. When it rains, no lightning, sitting in the patrol car. When it's hot, July 4th, sitting in the patrol car. When it's cold, in January, they sit in the patrol car. The list goes on. I could say a lot more things about this because I see it and everybody in this room sees it.
Excuse me, Mr. Winter, could you wrap it up? You've exceeded your 3 minutes. If you could just wrap it up and you can give the balance of your comments to the clerk and she'll make sure we get them. Okay, thank you. Next.
Scott Savarell, sorry if I said
Been
that.
called worse. Coverate, actually.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I'm a property owner at 3600 Estero Boulevard. It's kind of ironic. It was almost exactly 10 years ago to the day that I first addressed town council on the trailer bathroom issue. At that time, town council has heard many legal arguments and objections from both residents and attorneys. Neither I nor my attorney have ever seen a response from the town indicating that these bathrooms in a public right-of-way are legal according to plat law, our LDC comp plan, or FEMA regulations. Past councils have said they do not support trailer bathrooms and residential beach accesses and stated there would be no further TDC funding requests. In spite of this, the issue arises again. FEMA has a technical bulletin, which is a very important document in this discussion. Page 25 contains a section titled Restroom Buildings and Comfort Stations, which addresses this very issue. The section states, and I quote, "One question that arises whether restroom buildings or comfort stations can be treated differently than other types of V-zone structures and be constructed below the BFE, particularly when those facilities are situated in public parks or recreation areas." The answer is no. Structures must meet the same V-zone design and construction requirements as other buildings. Wording clearly refers to buildings and comfort stations, not just buildings. It was said in a prior council meeting that this section applies only to buildings. Clearly, that is not the case. I confirmed with FEMA that this regulation does apply to mobile or semi-mobile comfort stations. I have this conversation documented by a transcript of our chat. Residents have spoken loudly over the last 10 years and clearly do not want trailer bathrooms in residential neighborhoods or apparently anywhere else. Each time the issue is raised, the result is a groundswell of protest. 2 years ago, council conducted an extensive search of beach accesses, asking all adjacent property owners if they would allow a trailer bathroom. Not one agreed. FEMA technical bulletin should be more than enough to establish the placement of these units in flood zone V without them being V-zone construction compliant is just not allowed. My attorney has advised the council many times over the past 10 years. There are several other legal issues that apply to this topic as well. Trailer bathrooms are not consistent with the comp plan as stated by LPA, not comply with any section of the LDC, and they are not consistent with legal platted right-of-way use. Streets platted for street use means exactly that, street, not obstruct the right-of-way with any structure, Understandably, the town has stepped up code enforcement. The town's expectation that citizens follow the comp plan and LDC is warranted and necessary. Same standards should be applied to the town. TDC request for trailer bathroom funding is a separate and non-related issue. Other items in the applications that should be removed for the time being until these issues are properly addressed. Constituents deserve to be heard on this project. As such, I would hope the vote today will be postponed due to the town's email problems yesterday.
Just for my own edification, are you an adjacent property owner to that Palm Avenue location?
I'm not.
No, okay, very good. Thank you very much. Next,
Chris Schaub.
Good morning.
Give
Morning.
yourself-
My name is Chris Schaub. Hey, my favorite photo. Some of the gals have been here longer than me, but in 1988, I was out there picking up garbage off of Fort Myers Beach. I have gotten myself into a situation that I really I really should take responsibility for. Because I followed the rules and applied late for my chair and umbrella license. It would have been okay had the ordinance been followed for everyone. I did fill out our public hearing package. There are 14 copies back. I did attach a check for $1,000 for this. Mr. Alderhold, I hope you remember asking Mr. Hernstadt if there was a fee for this. And Mr. Hernstadt replying that there is, but we would hold Mr. Schaub's check until after the process was completed. The check was cashed. The appeal process is controlled by the instructions. The administrator can deny the permit and stall the permit. And it's the same person that denied my permit in the first place. I try to be honest and follow the ordinance. Town will accept renewal applications before September 1st and September 30th of each year. Renewal applications must include the items listed. There's 7 of them. Webster's definition of must. Used to say that something is required by a rule or a law. I followed did not turn in a complete application. As we know, I've been here, and you want me to prove that staff didn't follow the rules. I will take the responsibility because the bank has my money in the town coffers right now. It shouldn't be my responsibility to make sure town staff follows rules. Thank you.
thanks, Chris.
Barbara Hill.
Good morning, members of council.
Morning.
Barbara Hill, I'm Vice Chair of BORCAB. And Lee Melsick actually will be giving the official BORCAB advisory report to you, but I'm here on behalf of just public comment and as a member. Listening to council's M&P session last week, I was very encouraged that you scheduled a joint workshop with BORCAB in January to discuss what the priorities are and possible phasing and funding would be, and how this new expanded amenity can best serve our island community of residents, businesses, and visitors now and in the future. Redevelopment of Bay Oaks came out of many discussions and findings based on previous surveys, council workshops, and community stakeholder meetings. On that, DRMP, the land planner, came up with a master concept drawing last August. That was well received by both BORCAB and council. Since then, based on budget constraints, an entirely new consolidating plan was presented to all of us in October, which we believe is short-sighted. Recognize that the concept drawing goes beyond what is originally budgeted, but we do look forward to coming to the table to discuss priorities, cost efficiencies, phasing, and the opportunity for us to engage the community to secure funding. BORCAB looks forward to doing just that next month during our joint meeting with you, and we thank you very much for giving us that opportunity. In the meantime, we hope that beach residents, visitors, and businesses who will benefit from this larger plan, which was presented in August, will speak up and have their voices heard. Thank you, and happy holidays for all of you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Dale Mason.
Mason, restore the arches, and I feel like here we go again. At the management and planning meeting workshop, it was mentioned that they were going to discuss both the clock and the arches at today's council meeting. However, I don't see it on the agenda. It would be my suggestion, because we have been through, the county says, okay, we're going to put it in Crescent Beach Park. And the town said no. Now the town is saying, oh, well, maybe we can do it in Lynn Hall Park. And I'm waiting for the county to say no. I implore you to maybe have 2 members of council and 2 members of the county commission, and maybe somebody from the arches as part of a discussion where we can sit down and everybody at the same table say, no, this won't work because of this, and this won't work because of this, and this won't work because of this. And my wife said, hey, how about this? Because nobody's come up with this one yet. And maybe we can find something that everybody can take back to their respective group and say, yeah, that can work. Or maybe we'll decide that there is no solution. But I think it's something, it needs to be a meeting of all the parties concerned before anybody goes off saying, oh yeah, well, this is going to work. And then somebody else just says no. All the players have got to talk beforehand and see if we can come up with something. Tried to email this to all of the things, and I realize you're having email issues. I think everybody may have gotten it except Dan. I did get a note back that said Dan didn't get his. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Earl Morgan.
Good morning, Mayor Murphy and the council members.
Morning,
My name is
Earl.
Earl Morgan.
Morning.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning, and I want to express my personal support for restoring the arches. I'm going to ramble, I'm going to read, okay?
Fine.
I would also like to provide some of my rationale for thinking that bringing back the arches is a good idea. Know as council members, you have many times a thankless job of trying to please a number of different constituencies. I do recognize that some people may not appreciate history the same as I do, may not think that voting residents be the only ones heard, and be simply against the idea for whatever reason. Hopefully my remarks will at least help them understand I am taking the time to be here to support the effort to bring back the arches. which are a significant piece of Fort Myers Beach history, is evidenced behind you right here. Different constituents, as I would define them, of course, be residents, then the business community, and finally tourists. Some may not think constituent, but they may not be appreciating the fact that their local economy depends not only on how many tourists can be attracted to come to Myers Beach to begin with, but also depends on how long these tourists stay and how often they return. Everyone recognizes the beaches are the main attraction. Historical attractions add the number of things to do, therefore can have a positive impact on the economy. Since they can be part of the initial attraction, factor in how long a tourist chooses to stay, or even a motivation to return. The arches are a missing element. Bringing them back will be a positive addition, in my opinion. Having said all that, this morning I am addressing you as an individual, legal resident of Lee County, Florida, and as a tourist who is a regular visitor, spends money here. As a Lee County resident, I pay property taxes and sales taxes, and therefore indirectly contribute to the funding of infrastructure and transportation services. Plus, every time I visit, I directly contribute to your local economy. So in that sense, I really am a constituent. Just like many people who reside in Southwest Florida, and regularly return to and support the local economy, as well as those who come from elsewhere. And I'd like to point out that I've been returning to Fort Myers Beach on and off since 1950, is 70 years. Over 10 years as a Southwest Florida resident since 2009. As an interested observer, I attended your planning meeting last week. I was pleased to see that council reached a consensus about moving forward with the intention of restoring the arches, deciding to give serious consideration to Councilman Alderhalt's suggestion of placing them at Lynn Park. With that in mind, after the meeting, I went to Lynn Park, bought lunch at the Peach Riverside Grill, and then explored the landscape. But for what it's worth, I personally like the location and hope you will find a way to make that work. Thank you again. Allow me to offer my support. In closing, I'd like to say to you, let's get it done in 21.
Thank you, Earl.
That's all I have.
That's it. Okay, thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda is local achievements and recognitions. Start with you, Councilman Allers. We'll work our way around.
I have nothing this week.
Vice Mayor? Well said. I just want to recognize we had two folks die on the beach here within the last 2 weeks. One was Steve Huss, who was a former fireman here on the beach years ago. And so his family, to his wife, Maureen, we extend our condolences from the town. Also, on the south end of the island, Willie DeMayo died. Willie, if you've had a condominium down on the south end for 30 years, I heard, or 35 years or whatever, Willie probably painted it at one point. He was a painter on the beach and took care of a lot of condominiums on the south end of the island for years. And most recently, the past decade or so, he worked for Jeff down at the hardware store in Santini Plaza. So to Willie's widow, Lisa, we extend our deepest condolences and wish you well in the days ahead. That's all I have. Jim?
hopefully this works.
Already green. It just went off. Oh, there it goes. Okay, great. Yeah, I think so. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, for recognizing Willie. I'm not don't have the years on the island as you do, but he is an institution on the island, and I'm sorry for that loss. Could the two people who spoke on the arches, would you mind giving your cell phone number to Amy? I took some pictures of the potential locations at Lynn Hall and at Bowditch Park over the weekend. I just wanted to text those to you. I asked Roger to text them to my colleagues this week as well, and just potential options for folks to think about. The one recognition I wanted to make today is, I know everybody's struggling to find Christmas gifts for their loved ones, and there's a wonderful book out by the folks at the Mound House. It's called The Crown Jewel of Fort Myers Beach, The Mound House by Patrick McGowan. It's a new book. It's a beautiful book. It gives the whole history of the Mound House, all the folks involved. There's beautiful shots of you, Mayor, in this book. It's a great illustration, a great history, and it's affordable. It's at the Mound House gift shop. I think there's other locations on the island you could pick it up as well. You can just call the Mound House, and it's again called Crown Jewel, Fort Myers Beach, The Mound House by Patrick McGowan. Again, a beautiful book and a great potential Christmas gift or stocking stuffer. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you for that. Councilman Veach.
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to the Beach Kids Foundation. You know, it's difficult for everybody with all the restrictions, especially with these charities. This is their fundraising time of year, and the Beach Kids Foundation is doing everything virtually, so they're not creating any kind of exacerbation of the virus. And it's encourage anybody to go and find them and donate. It's still a good cause, even if they're being conscientious and not getting people together and not putting people at risk. And like others have said, I think, Mount House could use the support if you want to get a cheesecake book of photos of our mayor, apparently. And just to let everybody know that I know this is hard.
That's beefcake.
But everybody, I haven't seen the photos yet. So just, I really do. I want to appreciate everybody who is being conscientious and trying to arrest the spread as much as possible. Our zip code is going through an unprecedented surge of the virus with people coming in, and just urge everyone to be careful, and let's try to put this in a rearview mirror as quickly as possible by being conscientious.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the reports from the advisory committees. The first one is the Anchorage Advisory Committee. Is Catherine here? Yeah, Catherine is here.
Morning.
Morning.
I came before you about a month ago, I guess, to request that you consider pursuing the 2-unit option at Harbor House for our upland facility. And staff came through with a proposal that I hope all of you received that has kind of a tentative budget and layout for the facility. And at the Anchorage Advisory Committee meeting in November, we passed a motion to recommend to you to accept this proposal pending a review of condominium documents and whatever else needs to go forward. We've been working on this issue for 2 years. We feel that really at this point in time, we have 2 viable options, either staying at Matanzas or purchasing these units. And we feel as a committee that this is a good investment for the town. The town right now is investing in all sorts of areas. Bayside Park has been mentioned today. Bay Oaks. We're investing in a lot of different things, and the town runs the mooring field, and we feel this is a great investment for the town to take this in-house and own the facility.
Catherine, any questions for Catherine? Yeah.
Catherine, good morning. First of all, thank you for your efforts. Could you, just for folks who are listening, could you give a thumbnail sketch of the cost of the proposal, and then also just help us understand how this cash flows once it's up and running? Just in general, 10,000 foot.
Well, the units right now that would be negotiated, so I wouldn't really want to say, we're talking roughly two condominium units, which roughly $400,000-ish
Each or separately?
together, altogether.
Okay.
Maybe less, maybe,
Okay.
it's.
No, I understand your estimate,
Okay.
yeah.
And then there would be about a little over 200,000 renovation. We're looking at six restroom shower facilities. We're looking at an office. We're looking at laundry units, washer dryer units. So there would be a renovation. Right now, these units one was used for the sandpaper, I believe, at one time. The other side really is kind of a wide open slate. So they're talking about putting in walls and plumbing and that sort of thing.
If the town were to make this investment, the upfront investment, does it cash flow year to year on its own in terms of what we charge for rent? Would it pay for the cost of the operation of the mooring field, or would the town have to subsidize that additionally?
Well, there would probably be, well, upfront, there would certainly be some town subsidy.
No, I understand that. I understand the upfront cost, but once it's built and up and running, does it cash flow?
I believe it comes close. Because of the state regulations, we can't make money on the mooring field. Our goal is to come as close as we can to breaking even.
Okay. It's helpful. Thank you very much.
So Roger, where are we with negotiations and moving forward with the plan, some kind of proposal for council?
We're looking at the financial feasibility of it. From the standpoint of what type of investment the town would have to make that would not be possibly be recovered. Then what portion would be covered by the rental fees based on historical usage, and what adjustment the rates might need to make that work at a break-even standpoint. And our belief that we'll have that ready for you for your first M&P at January.
Now, what Kathy said about about by law not being able to profit off of the mooring field, does that include financing with a debt for such a facility?
Well, I think it can't be it's sort of like our building services department. It can't be a cash cow to the town. In other words, we can't make a profit, but if it did make a profit a particular year, that those monies would be set aside to perhaps cover costs in a year where due to storm or some other activity, there was a low occupancy or something like that. So the money would stay within the operation of the mooring field. It wouldn't be used for other things if it did turn a profit in the year. Don't forget, this probably would require initial investment of some size by the town, which if it were to turn a profit, the town could decide it wanted to reclaim those monies if it wished.
The idea is not, so that's kind of, trying to clarify my question, because the point I'm going to make is this investment would come out of the $1 million infrastructure project we're looking at going forward with, or is this a separate project that needs to be justified in a different way?
Well, that's a very significant conversation for the five of you to have, how you would like to deal with that. Clearly, the loan has some limitations, but you would want to embark upon dealing with the cash outlay to acquire units and all that would be a significant conversation that probably should invest some energy at M&P into.
Well, is this be considered a taxable loan then?
Well, there's some research that needs to be done on that, so it depends on how it's structured and what the money's used for, and if it's open to the public or not. So there's a lot of questions that would have to be answered, or your policy of what the units are, how they're set up, how they're utilized. Are the bathrooms public bathrooms, or are they for the exclusive use of the mooring field? occupants, and there's a lot of questions of that nature that we need to be answered.
For one, like to see this on a future M&P if we. as
It's
you have the
it's
information.
scheduled on our staff schedule for January. We were just waiting for the committee to review it and for Kathy to give you her comments today. And now we have a little bit more work to do. In fact, I was working on this earlier this week. We had some what if scenarios for the rates. Like I said, I believe we'll be ready to just give a briefing to the council at the next MMP.
Not to get ahead of ourselves, but are there grant opportunities available from like West Coast Inland Navigational and different organizations that we could apply for to help defray some of these costs?
Well, yes, in fact, the state, as part of the boat registration fees,
Yes.
sets aside a certain amount of that revenue for grants for maritime type operations. So that's sort of a dedicated funding source, grant source. So we suspect there will be some opportunities there.
Mayor, I didn't,
Sure.
the staff could send out that breakdown if, that, I don't remember seeing it. Maybe it was because the email was down, but I would like to have a look at that if you could resend it.
This one that came from staff?
Yeah. We could get that, Roger, if
Um,
someone could send that to us, we could take a look. I would like to
Maybe-
take a look at it.
Maybe you can ask Chelsea to send.
Yeah, well, we could send it. We're still working on the numbers, but we're glad to send out what we sent out.
Just as something to look at.
Well, this is as I said, it's a preliminary sketch of how a layout and also just a preliminary budget for the remodel and also the purchase and staffing of it. And again, as I say, it's really preliminary, but gives a kind of an idea. And if I might, as I said, I think we have two viable options, and Matanzas has 2 units now. We need more units for the 70 balls we have, and we're talking maybe later on expanding with 19 more. Matanzas is in their own restructuring, remodeling, and I think that's already been kind of brought up that, we could maybe expand there, but we might pay for it and then we don't own it. So that's why we really feel that this is the best viable option for us to go forward.
Catherine, I want to thank you for your letter to the town. It was very concise, to the point, makes a lot of sense to me, being a real estate guy. And I have a feeling that this may very well be the way to move forward. And I thank you for your efforts, and I'm sure there'll be more to speak of at this upcoming M&P meeting, and made good progress, and I can see the ball rolling. So
We are planning to meet this month
Good.
again. So, certainly I'm available at any time if any of you have any questions
good.
for us
Any more-
going forward.
Any more questions for Catherine before she leaves? She sits back down. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, we're also going to get a report this morning from BORCAP, Mr. Melsick.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Lee Melsick, and I'm speaking this morning for your Bay Oaks Advisory Board. Our chairperson, Betty Simpson, couldn't be here today and drew the short straw. So quickly, before I begin, I know there are several councilmen, congratulations to all of you, who probably don't know me. My family moved down to the beach in 1950. I grew up here. I'm a proud alumnus of Beach Elementary School, and spent 32 years as a reporter in town at the News Press, and former president of the Fort Myers Beach Rhode Island Historic Society. I was president there for years. So that's me and my association with the island. I played in the first Little League out here, first County Babe Ruth League team. And I'd like to start by addressing something that Councilman Adderholt said at last week's MPO. He said he believed our committee's vision for the future of Bay Oaks may have been lost in the shuffle. He agreed. The committee unanimously agrees with that. And so I'd like to offer that vision to the residents who are tuned in various ways to this meeting this morning. I think hopefully there's quite a few out there. I'd like to do that by reading the letter that our committee sent to each of you, in which we put on a couple of published on a couple of beach websites. This council has an opportunity to do something that's never been done on this island. Have an opportunity to give the residents and visitors something they've never had here. New, well-designed, flexible community campus, recreation, entertainment, socialization, and education. All of it designed to be relevant to this town's diverse population. Place for all ages, all interests, all levels of energy and mobility. For all who seek a place to meet for conversation, exchanges of ideas, for recreation, concerts, exercise, educational classes in cooking, healthy living, art, dance, creative writing, resume writing, hurricane preparedness, job fairs, and a variety of resident requested topics. From the youngest to the oldest, moms and dads, widows and widowers, youth and adult organizations, a gathering place so attractive in its diversity, it defines and personifies community. A place no resident will be able to resist, keeping their head in the door and looking forward to returning. Please don't do this on the cheap. Find the money. Do it in phases if you must. Make it clear this is the plan and it won't be compromised. Our committee's plan already has the support of the president of the local Chamber of Commerce, president of the Friends of Bay Oaks, the board of the Islands Little League. Bay Oaks Recreation Campus Advisory Board looks forward to the planned joint meeting with this council to discuss the creation of what can be an extraordinary community gathering place for all of the town's residents and visitors. That's our vision. And we hope that it won't be lost again. Bear with me a second. In addition to mailing it to all of you, we placed it on several beach websites, including the Beach Talk radio newsletter, Best of Fort Myers Beach, and one of my favorites might be a beach kid if you up here. Your advisory, with that, your 7 members of your advisory board unanimously recommend and request that you reject terribly undersized, wrongly located, and visually unappealing building CRMP and town staff presented to council in October. About our input, and adopt the conceptual master plan drawing presented by DRMP to council in August. Based on community input and surveys, we believe key amenities such as the athletic center, pickleball courts, a dynamic amphitheater, and a community building that fits future generations and programs outlined in the concept drawing will best serve this community. Finally, we request that BORCAB be included in each step of the decision-making process regarding the design and creation of a first-rate, full-service community campus all of the residents and visitors can be proud of, eager to gather in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leroy. Hang on a second. Any questions of Mr. Melsick? Anybody want to ask anything?
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Those are the reports. The next item on the agenda is the reorganization of council. Start, as always, with mayor. I'll entertain motions from the floor for the position of mayor. Motions, nominations. I'll nominate myself for mayor.
I would like to nominate Rexanne House for mayor. Anybody who could tell a room full of guys to man up?
Murphy, Hasselfrost. Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Jim Adderholt.
I would respectfully appreciate, first of all, the nomination, but I would respectfully decline the nomination, but thank you for that kind gesture.
That's 2 declines for you in 2 years. You're due one day. Okay. Thank you. Any further nominations? Okay, we'll vote on them on the way they came in. I was first. All in favor for Murphy for mayor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
I believe, if I may, Mr. Mayor, before I cast my vote, I believe that 2 things. Number one, that you ran for a 1-year term, and I know the referendum that passed sort of distorted this process, and I believe that you're entitled to your term, and so and I also would say that 2020 has been an extremely difficult year, not only for the island and for everyone, but it's also been difficult to be mayor. So I think you deserve the opportunity to complete a full term, and I will support your nomination.
Thank you for those kind words. Okay, I'll ask again. All in favor of Murphy, signify by saying aye. Aye. Was an aye? Okay. The ayes have it. Murphy will be mayor. Okay, the next item is vice mayor. We'll accept nominations from the floor for vice mayor.
I would nominate Councilor Hasselfrost for vice mayor.
Vice mayor for vice mayor. Any other nominations? Close the nominations. All in favor of Vice Mayor Hasselfrost remaining as Vice Mayor signify by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous. Congratulations, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. The approval of the minutes, the draft minutes of the meeting of November 16th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Or any corrections or additions or deletions or whatever?
Moved.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion? Objection? The motion carries unanimously. Next item is a beach renourishment presentation. I've been informed by staff that this gentleman or person, whoever it is, won't be here till 11 o'clock. We'll come back to that. When that person comes, you'll let us know. The next item is the consent agenda, and we have two items to remove. Item A is the Lee County Sheriff's Office extra traffic duty detail. That was asked by, I believe, Councilman Veach to remove that to discuss.
I did.
I'm sorry, Rexanne, I'm sorry. Rexanne to discuss, so I'll turn it over to you.
I just had a brief question. Considering the pandemic and we're expecting to have less visitors to the island, I just thought it would be a good idea to discuss whether we really need to spend this money. I don't know if anybody's really monitoring the traffic. Is it growing as it usually is? My perception is that it's not where it usually is this time of year. And maybe we could put this off, and if it looks like that we really do need it down the road, we could institute it later on. But I will say, my perception, I know, is not scientific. So if someone has been monitoring it and knows that this is needed, I'm not opposing it, but just thought it would be a good question to ask.
Good question indeed. What do you think about that, Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, we really believe that people, whether they're tourists from other, other parts of the state or other states or even other countries, with the pandemic, some will be getting here, but more likely than not, people from Lee County will still be coming to the beach. We also recognize the fact that these are volunteer duties by the sheriff's office, so they need time. This is not a matter of calling up today for tomorrow to get somebody. They need advance time. It's easier for us to get them scheduled and cancel them than it is for the inverse to happen. So,
Quick clarification, Roger. What do you mean by volunteer duties?
Well, they get paid, but I mean, they're volunteer, that they're volunteers to take the duty.
Off duty.
Okay, right.
So, they need time to recruit officers for those shifts, those off-duty shifts. With reasonable notice, we can cancel shifts, so if we see that it's going to be raining all weekend or whatever, we can do that. But clearly, I don't want to spend money that we don't have to spend. So with that said, I'll listen to council's thoughts on the item.
Mayor, if I could, first of all, I think the vice mayor asked a very good question. Having said that, I don't have the scientific answer, but anecdotally, we went from the south end of the island over the bridge on the north end, left at 5, got across the bridge probably at 6:10. The traffic is real, and I can't, as everyone has experienced the angst of being stuck in this traffic, couldn't think of a better expenditure of taxpayer dollars than this kind of assistance to help traffic flow. It's not a panacea. Man, it's a real problem. And if those folks help, and I think they do to some extent, we worked on it last year, or the previous council worked on it last year in terms of getting them to punch up before they have them cross the street and just train them better. I think it's an excellent use of our tax dollars, but I think certainly it's a good question to ask, because it'd be nice to have this be data driven. But I strongly support its expenditure.
I think I would concur with Councilman Adderholt. I mean, I've seen traffic backed up mid-island a few times, and talking to some of the businesses, a lot of the restaurants and hotels are having a pretty good year. It seems like we're kind of an island of some busyness compared to some of the hotels and things that are not in a tourist area and they're business really. I think there is business here. I think a lot more people are staying at vacation rentals, and you see that in the traffic too.
I agree. I think I think it's an important thing to have. I think we do need it. There may be a little less traffic this year, but I travel that road almost every single day and just in the afternoon. And I can tell you, they do make a difference, especially during season. We may not get a lot of people coming from the north this year, but I do believe that we will have a lot of people from Florida coming to visit. I would support spending money. I think it's money well spent.
Certainly a worthwhile question. You know, we're always watching the town's money here. I tend to agree with Roger on this, that having them lined up and being able to call them off if it got to that point where we thought we wouldn't need them for some extended period of time, we could save that money, probably be in our best interest rather than try to bring them back on board. So I guess I would tend to agree with the majority here that probably be best to leave it in there for now, and then if need be, adjust later on, but not put ourselves at a disadvantage right now. But answer your, okay.
Just wanted to ask the question.
And it was a good question. Okay, and the other item that was pulled out was this one by Councilman Veach, was item C, discuss the TDC projects for fiscal year 2021, 2022.
Yeah, so of course, which is probably pretty obvious, my big concern in there is what's in the request for two reasons. And one is that I know there's been a recent outpouring from the people from the Leonardo Arms in the south of the island to be included in this nourishment task that we have. And I understand from talking to Chad that there's a section of the south part of the beach, including that area where they're concerned about that's considered critically eroded by the state. So one question is, again, it depends on the timing of this, or whether we need to submit it right away or not. I also understand there are quite a few other there are hitches potentially with expanding this this nourishment request. Not the least is I think there's a line, an ECL line, which has to be established before you can ask for a renourishment, which has been removed, I was told, from that part of the beach. The second thing is the request for the bathroom trailer. This is something that is fairly contentious. I think that I was told here at the meeting that that capital projects are being zeroed out and that we shouldn't ask for capital projects because they'll be refused.
This was on the agenda before and approved, but when it went to TDC, it was deleted last time it went through. That's why we're putting it through again.
Also been, I mean, previous councils have, when this went to be replaced, what is it, 5 years ago? Councils voted against replacing it.
And then the council voted to replace it last year.
I just feel compelled to say that I personally, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think we've had an opportunity to really hear from the public on this because of the email. And I think that having it, just kind of buried in the consent agenda, I think was not enough sunshine was on this item to really get a feel what the people want.
I speak
Yeah.
from the TDC
Go right
perspective.
ahead. Go right ahead, yes.
As far as Leonardo Arms is concerned, I can tell you that the city of Sanibel has twice come before the TDC outside of the regular grant process for emergency issues regarding their beaches. So it doesn't have to be in the annual yearly request to be addressed, and they were granted both times. They're emergency requests. I don't think we're ready with Leonardo Arms to put it into this request. There's lots of steps that we have to go through before it would be ready to ask for sand there. So that would be my answer to your first issue. As to the bathroom issue, this is a replacement of one that was there for years. It's not a new place. It's not in a residential neighborhood. And the last time this came up, we asked the sheriff's department and the businesses that neighbor whether anyone ever had any complaints about this particular location. And I keep getting emails about this from everybody that they don't want them down the beach. I've never asked for one down the beach. This one is in a business neighborhood not a residential neighborhood. We have never received any complaints about it.
You know, and another opposition really have is, I think that we have now with the addition, and, you know, Bayfront Park was an example where you're asking for a bathroom there. There already was one, and even the town council that wasn't aware of it. We have 11 bathrooms, 11 public bathrooms on the island. There's no, we're not making really much of an effort to communicate that with the visitors here, where they are. We want to put more in without really utilizing the ones that we currently have. I think that if town council doesn't know where a public bathroom is, and they've been looking at it, what chance do our visitors have? I think the first step really has to be to utilize what we have before we ask for more.
This isn't asking for more. This is to replace what was already there, was used. I received emails after it was taken out from businesses telling me that people were defecating in front of their businesses because the bathroom was no longer there. So there are people who complain on the other side as well.
What is the timing on this? Is this something that has to be decided today, or is this we allow the public to comment on this more?
My understanding is that this timing is to go in for the regularly scheduled annual grants. This is the time to approve it. And this is not something that you could ask for on an emergency basis the way the sand is.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
John, somebody sent me the minutes from, I think, an M&P meeting in January, and it said, I'll just quote, Mr. Herron was directed to provide research on the plat of the street for street purposes, review of FEMA regulations and our LDC comp plan regarding temporary structures on public streets. You research this, and A, is it a violation of FEMA regulations, and B, does it violate our own LDC and comp plan provisions, in your opinion?
No. Almost, I think immediately after the meeting, staff provided me with a copy, maybe even during the meeting, during the course of the MMP meeting. I do recall following up with several of the council members at the time, immediately after the meeting, saying that the plat itself says that the platted right-of-way the platted area is to be used for public purposes. It doesn't specify for roadway purposes. It doesn't specify for bathrooms. It's just simply says for public purposes. Under Florida law, that's a very broad term. And arguably it can be argued successfully that, you know, particularly if there are prior use of bathrooms in that location, that's an appropriate use of that area. As far as the FEMA regulations are concerned, and the technical bulletin was mentioned, technical bulletin, as I understand it, is about permanent structures. This is not going to be a permanent structure. If and when there were a storm to in the area, what normally happens is the piping, which is not permanent, is disconnected. The trailer on which the bathrooms are connected is or attached to or is connected to a vehicle, and it's removed. And so I'm not aware of that. I mean, we certainly, as we, and I want to emphasize that as I understand this item, this is purely to apply for the funding. It doesn't commit you all to building buying the bathroom, placing it there. It just simply is a method that right now, if you don't ask for it during this cycle request, you won't get it during this cycle request. Doesn't mean that you can't do it next year, but if you want to look at it and you want to be able to look at this and try and do it in the next 12 months, and you see TDC funding, then now would be the time to apply for the funding. Just because you apply for the funding does not commit you to actually doing it. So, you know, there's going to be presumptively at least one, if not two more times where this would potentially come back before you for consideration, including the actual physical acquisition of the bathroom facilities and authorizing its placement at this particular location. So I'm not aware of any limitation. Now, obviously, as we develop through and we go through this process, I certainly would think that
not only myself, but staff. There's an individual here on staff that is the town's floodplain manager. He's the liaison with FEMA, and as part of the permitting process for that, he would reach out and communicate to FEMA whether or not this is permissible. Depending upon what that answer is, it may or may not, the project theoretically may or may not move forward. So what I'm trying to make is that this is just the first step in several that may lead to the placement of a transportable, I guess the best way to characterize it, bathroom facility at this location, to replace one that would, as I understand, previously exist in the location.
I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyways. Is there anything we can do today to ensure, I know we can't bind future councils, I'm not trying to do that, but is there anything we could do today to help prevent any sort of precedent from being established? Because obviously there's a real concern from citizenry with respect to, if this is approved, it's a camel's nose and it creates a potential domino effect in other locations on the beach. Is there anything we can do to limit that potential precedential effect?
All I think that any council can do is say that is publicly take the position this is the only one, and wouldn't go so far as adopting a resolution, but as you point out, it would not bind future councils.
I have I either ask the Vice Mayor Roger or you, John. Timeline wise, I have a real concern that folks have had a very difficult time communicating to the council with the email system being down. Not nobody's fault. It's just with technology. There's a lot of folks who were trying to reach us over the weekend, late last week. Some were successful. They got our private emails, which was fine. But some folks didn't have that luxury. I don't know how many folks are out there, but clearly the folks that I talked to over the weekends and correspondence were very passionate about this issue. Do we have any time can we separate this piece out and allow more additional public input, or does it have to be combined? How do we do this procedurally if it's the will of the council to separate this one item out to give it some additional time?
I would defer to the manager on what the deadline is to submit this request to TDC, and that's all you're authorizing. Again, I want to emphasize that.
Just a couple of kind of clarifications here. I was reading through this informational exchange, FEMA informational exchange that one of our residents here had, and he specifically asked them that when they said that the restroom needed to conform to the V zone design as far as the base flood elevation. They asked him, even if the town considers them to be mobile, and he said that is correct. They would need to be constructed to flood elevation. Another constituent emailed me something saying that is this area zoned for a trailer? Because only the red coconut was zoned for trailers.
I don't believe that this is the trailer this is a public facility. As I understand your comp plan and your LDRs, public facilities are allowed in all zoning districts. The trailer, I think that you are referring to in the context of the red coconut is a trailer park.
The one that's at Crescent Beach Park is very similar to what it is we'd be doing. It's already been there, permitted. Under the Crescent Beach Park bathroom, it's the same. It might be smaller than that one.
I have no idea what challenges are put on there. And the other point I just want to make about, but all we're doing is ask for the money. I think that we are in fact setting a precedent by approving this. I think that, and I've seen it before, where there were plans in the works since I've been here in town where they wanted to put these things all over the beach accesses in the residential areas. So it isn't, by doing this now, I think we are setting a precedent that maybe future councils would be more aggressive in where they want to put these. And again, I don't think we're utilizing the bathrooms that we have.
Well, I got input, I can tell you. I didn't want to name names, but Tuckaway is one of the businesses that spoke to me, was in favor years ago when I was trying to bring this back before. They are close to this area. People come in and use their bathroom once that one disappeared. So the businesses are having to shoulder the brunt, in addition to the fact that I swear that I did get emails from people in that area after it disappeared, that people were literally defecating in that area because they needed to go to the restroom. They were used to the fact that a bathroom had been there. They're out there having to clean it up. There are people on the other side of this issue that want the bathrooms.
Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, a couple of things I want to emphasize and respond to Council Adult. So the timing is such is that we have to decide whether or not we're going to apply this grant or not. The actual, if we're awarded the grant, there's an actual grant award document that would have to be executed, and that is executed at the direction of town council. So it would be coming back, if they actually set aside money for this, come back to the town at a later date to actually sign off on a grant document. And that grant document would be on the agenda. And as Mr. Herron indicated, there would be a purchase order that exceeds $25,000 that the town council have to approve or authorize me to proceed with to actually buy the unit if we got to that point. So I want to be clear that this is not the one and done decision here. This is just step one of a multi-step process. To the extent that you feel that, will there be future opportunities for public input on this issue? The answer is yes, whether you include it in this year's grant application, and the answer is yes, whether you don't. So in both cases, it's a yes. Now, whether it's appropriate at this location, that's for you all to decide.
So to summarize, I think we're all going to have another bite or two at the apple for this item here. And,
haven't we, sorry to interject, but haven't we asked for these bathrooms before and then not put them in? Haven't we got approval from TDC and then not installed them?
no,
No.
no, I don't
That
think
when
so.
back in
I don't
13
think
or
so.
something, there was a plan to put quite a few in different places and we,
Didn't ask for them.
I don't know about, I can tell you that as long as I've been associated with the town, there's never been a plan to have anyone other than the Palm location. And as the Vice Mayor mentioned, from moving it and being exposed to salt there, last time we moved it, and I think it was for Irma, I want to say. But it was some hurricane threat. We moved it and we just realized we couldn't move it back. So it was in disrepair. The council had, I think, had said that at that point in time not to go forward with its replacement. And it sort of sat dormant with nothing there until a year ago when it was included in the funding request list through the process we're having today. Council at that time voted to support of moving forward to request the funding of TDC. When it got to the TDC, it was not funded. Hence, we're back here today discussing it again.
Okay.
I also, I think also just the appropriateness of treating the beach access like parks. They just don't have the space, or often they're in areas where it's just not very appropriate. I do know from my personal experience of living next to one that they are not particularly well regulated spaces. There's a lot of them spread up and down the beach. Last Thursday, there was a bunch of kids having a bonfire. At midnight, they were still arriving on the beach. And the way the town rules are right now in beach access is that you're almost incentivized to come late because parking is free after hours. So I think there's a lot of reasons why I think just putting something like this, a main like this, in a beach access, which is not a park, which is not as well patrolled, I think is an issue. I think just asking for it is, and if we're asking something and we're not committed to getting it, I think that to me would send a bad message to we're not serious about what we're asking for.
Mr. Mayor, I think that is, a valid point that, we shouldn't get into the habit of asking for things we're not prepared to follow through with. But I wouldn't, if the council's mindset is not to go forward, I wouldn't say, well, what the heck, let's just see what happens. We'll punt the ball down the road. But do think that, when we go to TC and we ask for money, we should be fairly committed to following through.
No, I would ask the vice mayor for capacity as the representative to the TDC, make the necessary inquiries of the people there on the TDC and inform them that, we're still kind of in the air apparently here with the council as to which direction we want to go. And assure them that we're not being willy-nilly with the TDC funds here. This isn't a habit of ours to apply for something and then vote not to go through with the execution of it. Well, I think you can probably speak with some of your people over there at the TDC and let them know what's going on and get some
I would
feedback.
hesitate to do that, because then what you have done is you have planted the idea in their mind that we do ask for things that we're not sure we want to go
Well,
through with.
this is sort of exceptional. I mean, it would be,
This group of people that emails me, I have been through this so many times and voted on this issue. These people email me every time it comes up. They email me, evidently some kind of gossip and rumor gets going out there that we're asking for bathrooms all the way up and down the beach. I received an email yesterday saying that I wanted to put one at Sterling. I have never asked to put one at Sterling. Everybody starts feeding this frenzy, and it's getting very tiring. All I've tried to do is put a bathroom back in a place where there was a bathroom. There was never a problem with the bathroom at this location. No one ever complained about this bathroom.
and I know it was asked earlier, is there any way to memorialize that by resolution or ordinance? That we can just say that's, or create a special exception or zone or whatever for that particular situation there, the exclusion of everywhere else on the island. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always reluctant to recommend that any council, this or any other council, something in absolutes. I would, suggest if you direct staff that, this and future councils shall discourage, bathrooms on, public facilities of this nature, in any other locations. Something similar to that.
Well, I'm sure that would have the support of all the council people here, and whether that's good enough, I don't know, but anyhow.
Would it be possible? I know that it's just kind of really kind of policing ourselves in a way to come up with an ordinance or a resolution that would limit what entities go in a beach access in a residential area.
The issue that is before us today is not a residential area.
Oh, but
If you want to bring up a whole new issue, then you do that during council member items. We put it on the agenda, we M&P it.
Since we're talking about this point, and one of the fears that people have, which does have some precedence, is people wanting to put then bathrooms in residential areas. Because there was a proposal to do this since I've been active in the town.
And I was on the council when everybody came and objected to it, and the council as a whole said, we aren't going to ask to put them in residential neighborhoods. Anita Saracita sat there and said that to the crowd that was here. We are not going to do that. We are not going to ask to put bathrooms in residential neighborhoods, and we never have again.
Read those minutes. I read those minutes.
Okay, but that's like an obscure minutes. If we can come up with a resolution that codifies that, it may satisfy the people who are concerned that this will spread.
Well, that would be easy enough to do. I mean, but that really doesn't.
That's not what we're talking about right now.
But it's an argument about this particular point. It's sentient to this point because this creates a problem, and that's a potential solution to the problem that this creates.
And as I see it, there's a process here.
I think
We have something we're voting on now. If you want to bring that up separately and put it on a future agenda, I don't disagree with that.
Councilor Veek is trying to help you get to a yes vote, or trying to help us get to a yes vote. I think that he's trying to be helpful here.
I think they
Mayor?
go hand in hand.
Mr. Mayor?
We're all trying to be helpful. Yes, sir.
All right. Could we caveat this item to say that with the consent of the adjacent property owners that we would apply for this? And therefore, that's being built into the record that we have the consent of the adjacent property owner. So that's why we're going forward and asking for it. Whereas perhaps in another location, we wouldn't have the consent of the adjacent property owners and therefore we would not. Maybe that would be helpful.
Me, Mr. Mayor, add just my 2 cents to this real quick. And then
Go
I'll
right
just-
ahead.
I agree with Vice Mayor Hossafras. I think that it's not, we're just replacing what was there. I have spoken with several businesses around that area that would love to see it back so that people don't keep coming into their place. I struggle sometimes when I hear people talk about the public restrooms on the island. Anyone that has children, I think, would argue with you that Snug Harbor and the Mound House to be considered beachfront bathrooms is a stretch. If you've ever had to run to the restroom with a child that has to go to the bathroom, you're not going to make it that far. I think if we're inviting people to come to the island, to spend their money, to come and sit on the beach, I think it's a responsibility of the council and the town to provide them facilities that they need. I agree with you. I don't think they need to be in we're talking about one specific area that was there before. I would be in favor of keeping it on here and moving it forward with the TDC.
Thank you. Were you done, Jim?
I think so. I just think the mayor and Councilor Veach were trying to figure out a way procedurally to help get us to a yes vote in terms of figuring out a way to, I know you're not supportive of residential beach access restrooms, but my point is he's trying to figure out a way to codify it in a way that would give him some comfort. And I support that effort. I think that's a reasonable ask. If there's a way we could do that procedurally, I think that would be a helpful step.
Well, maybe the town attorney can do a little more research on it and see if he can come back with us something.
And one
That
thing,
drew aside from the other attorney.
I just
But,
want to comment on a couple of things that Dan Adler says. And I realize there are some locations on the beach where having the public come in and want to use your bathroom be a cumbersome thing, where there's just a crush of people that would have an effect on the business. The other thing I urge businesses to think about is that all those people that come through your door looking for a bathroom, especially people with kids, they're potential customers. There's an opportunity for businesses out there. The other thing is, I think that to say that it is our responsibility to put bathrooms there where people want them, there are people who their business is bringing people to the beach and not providing bathrooms, like large parking lots, things like this. Seems like that's a place where people come. Seems like instead of expecting the government to do this for you, that the businesses that create this need should have some of the burden to provide that service of a bathroom.
And I want to be clear, I was not saying that we should put them wherever the public thinks that they want them. That was not my point. My point was, if you're a business owner and you're inviting people into your business to eat, drink, do whatever, and then tell them you have no place to use the restroom, to me, that would be bad business. My point was, if we're spending money to redesign logos and advertise to bring people here, and then tell them that they have to walk a half a mile to use a public restroom, doesn't make sense. Or walk into town hall, use the public restroom, doesn't make sense to me. And in this case, we're talking about one specific location that was already there, that was taken away, that we'd like to put back. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about trying to set precedent. We're not talking about trying to put them at every beach access. We're talking about this one specific location. And all the people that I've talked to around the area are in support of it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the question. I'm going to move that we approve the consent agenda. For second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Technically, it was removed from the consent agenda. I think we have to vote on it separately.
I would recommend that you make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, and then vote separately on items A and C.
Okay, I will adjust my motion to reflect that. And there's second? And,
I'll amend my
Okay.
second.
okay, any objection to that?
This is for the consent agenda.
Removing the,
It's for B and D.
yeah, B and D. Any objection? Okay, that passes. All right, now, item A, which was removed from the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Objection? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item C, which was removed. Approved TDC projects for fiscal year 2021-22. Is there a motion to approve that?
I would move to approve it.
Moved. I'll second that. Further discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Sir.
Go ahead. I just want to explain my vote as well. I vote no on that just specifically because of the restroom issue, and I don't think we've given the public, particularly due to technology issues, we have not given them proper opportunity to voice their concern or support.
I think there'll be, just to add my 2 cents, there'll be more opportunities to voice their concern. Any other comment?
I've said enough.
Okay. The motion carries. Okay, public hearings. Anyone want to take a 5-minute, 10-minute break, or do you want to keep going? Yes? Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. It's 10:45 approximately.
Kind of the, right now.
a chatty group.
Everybody's socially deprived.
Exactly. Okay, we're going to go back to item 10, which is we're going to have a presentation here, a short presentation on beach renourishment. Chad, you want to make the introductions here?
Good morning. My name is Chad Schutz, environmental staff for Town of Fort Myers Beach. I brought along Mr. Michael Poff, who is the engineer. His firm did the due diligence study for the current project scope for the Estero Island Renourishment Project, which you see up on the screen. It's the north side, Bowditch to just south of the pier. This is our current estimate based on Mr. Poff's report. And we've, as you know, we've submitted to the state for that 50% for the design and permitting portion, and the rest of the project next year to the state for the construction portion of it. But this is kind of the overall numbers and timeline for the current project as it is. I believe y'all were talking about this earlier. So FDP uses our monuments to mark the beach. And there's a report that designates, you know, what areas of the beach are critically eroded. So 175 to 200, so Bowditch to roughly around the outrigger, which is, you know, the Wyndham, just north of the Wyndham. Then 203 to 207, which is Cresciente to Sun Caper. Give you an idea of where those are at.
Chad, just a quick question.
Sir.
You term erosion. I'm taking that literally in terms of the ocean eroding the island away. Do you also use the quality of the sand and the amount of sand on the beach under the definition of erosion, or is it just literally where the ocean meets the beach?
Erosion is sediment being moved around by, you know, fluid, water or air. So the quality of the sand doesn't affect, you know, if you have a big rock, you know, versus little granules of sand, you know.
But I mean, like right now, the sand is along almost the entire beach is extremely hard and flat. If you wanted to build a sand castle, you'd need a pretty sharp shovel through many parts of the beach. That's not part of your, do you quantify that in any way? Does your team or does the engineer?
So sand, coloration and grain size is an important factor in determining what kind of sand we're going to bring in.
I meant in terms of just is that just, I'm just trying to understand if the compactness and the way it's formulated on the beach. I mean, there's times that the beach is extreme. I know it's ever evolving. There's times there's a ton of loose sand. It's very nice to walk on. Like, again, right now it's really hard and flat, which is great for biking and so forth. But that's not part of your evaluation, I guess, or is it? I guess, do you look at that as you analyze the beach?
I mean, is it compact because the tide is kind of receded away?
Very low, very flat, very hard.
Yeah, so it's just gotten a different shape. I mean, the high tide has kind of moved up a bit, and we have a lot more beach that is subject to the tide.
I'm just curious how you look at that, but that helps me.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, so what's designated as critically eroded, and this is important with regards to qualifying for state funding or also TDC funding. This shows you just areas where it is eroding, and you can see again where, you know, 203 to 206, 207 is in red, which means it is eroding at a high rate. And you can also see that near Bowditch. This is from a report which I'll share with council once our emails are going again. The town paid for this report back in 2014. A lot of good knowledge in here, so I'll share that with y'all as well. So this is the area of concern that y'all have been talking about, 203 to 207. And you can see Leonardo Arms near 204.
Want to point that out, please? Point that out.
Go up the screen, just.
This area is just, it's going to be at I say a pressure point at a headland where subject to a lot of wave energy. One gentleman asked me over at Leonardo Arms.
Chad, go ahead. Since you were in front of the mic, just say what you just said again so people can hear you. in the
Oh,
mic,
so,
yeah.
so, yeah, sure. So this area, at 204 it's at a headland, it's at a pressure point where it's subject to a lot of wave energy. And, it is eroding. And, one gentleman had asked me, is this, kind of, the beach had been reset. Is this kind of like where the beach wants to be? And it's not really equilibrium. The ocean's just going to keep taking from this area. If that makes sense. So, to that ECL question, so an ECL has been established from Bowditch, down to, Lanark. So that area has been surveyed. Another kind of picture, that purple line is where the ECL has been surveyed. You can also see a purple line down south, which, Councilman Veach was referring to earlier. That has been vacated. They determined that sand just naturally accreted. It wasn't, placed by the state, so, or whatever the legalities of that were, but that no longer exists. There's no ECL down, in that 203 to 207 area near Leonardo Arms.
Just a quick question that, so don't miss the point here. So you're saying wherever the ECL line is, there has been
The survey, yeah, this
survey,
survey
but
has
there hasn't necessarily been any renourishment.
correct.
And when you were pointing out to what areas were eroded, the middle part, I mean, because like, it seems like pretty much the whole island, right? Because from Bowditch Point all the way down to Wyndham on one section with a small gap. But inside there was also an area that you said was accreting. Still considered quickly eroded when it's accreting?
So I'm not sure. So the area that I said earlier that it's accreting is down by Carlos Point Beach, down at the bottom. Right, and there's a ECL.
Go back a couple of slides. One where you had this one here. So this is showing what, 83 to 87 is accreting, right? That's showing like 83 to 87 is accreting. Erosion rate is.
It's a minimal erosion rate, yeah, and it can be accreting in the blue to purple. Yes, sir.
It's still included in the part that's considered critically eroded.
Sir. I don't make the designation. That's a state designation. So it's in a report that I can share with you.
Mentioned that the Leonardo Arms area was a pressure point on the beach. Is that similar to where the pier is as well? Is that why we see such severe erosion around the pier, the businesses around the pier? Is that a similar pressure point? Or is it a different dynamic there?
Go to Mr. Michael on this one.
Morning, Michael Poff with Coastal Engineering. Thank you for having me here.
You can take your mask off while you're talking. Yeah, great.
Sure. So, great question. The wave refraction processes on Estero are complex. Generally, sand along our coast moves from north to south. Estero Island, it's different. There are nodal points, which means divergence of sediment transport. And so the sheltering of Sanibel and Captiva protect north end. And there's actually sediment transport from south to north along the north end, which is why the terminal groin was built at the inlet, was to keep that sand from the beach. So there's also wave refraction that the pier changes wave patterns as it propagates through the pier. So that's why you'll see those patterns of erosion and accretion at different periods. Your question about the designation of the state critically eroding beaches. So the state of Florida has designated these beaches, except for that small section, as critically eroding. That's not going to go away, and you don't want that to go away. Even if there's an accretional period of time, overall, it's still a critically eroding beach, and that allows you to apply and get state funding. So a lot of the times, the accretional periods relate to when either sand was placed. Now, in this case, it's before the beach project, but the dredging of the sand of the inlet has been placed in the near shore zone. Some of that sand does make it onto the beach. So there'll be periods of accretion in the central part of Estero that's attributed to the beneficial use of the sand coming out of the inlet.
Just another kind of point, I think, to what Councilman Adderholt was saying about by the pier, is that when there's a structure, a seawall or a rigid building, and when the water is up against that, then you start scouring and it accelerates the erosion.
Correct. Absolutely. Armoring will accelerate the erosion because when the waves hit it, height goes up, it amplifies it, and that return wave then causes the extra scouring.
One last point I wanted to cover, I think the mayor alluded to it in the M&P meeting, was the ownership issue. So the state considers this state lands waterwood of that red line. But in talking to FWC, we were discussing questions regarding raking, which they do not see as a public benefit, which would be needed to get those kind of permits. However, I also asked the question, well, what about renourishment? And they do consider the renourishment a public benefit because it is creating habitat. So we would get that proprietary authorization in that area. And I think that's all I had in terms of slide. Oh, I have some, just some pictures. This is right after Ada. Those pilings have been removed now. You can see how it gets skinny. It's even pretty skinny at low tide, and over there by the mangroves, just north of Leonardo Arms. This is at Bermuda Dunes, just north of Leonardo Arms. And also included Newton Park, the area where some beach. Questions?
When I spoke to you some time ago, you mentioned to me about the private versus public aspects of this. Could you talk a little bit about what you were telling me then? Remember our conversation? About
So Michael can probably talk to this a bit more. He's more familiar with the statute, but whenever we're getting state funding, I believe is what she's referring to, can kind of go through all the different hurdles that you have to jump for state funding.
And Mike, before you start, could you distinguish between state funding that you're talking about and the TDC funding that we've been used to getting? And have we gotten this in the past? Just if you give a little bit of background for some of us newer folks.
Sure, absolutely. So in 2011, for that project, applied for and you received both TDC funding and state funding. At the time, the county was the local sponsor. Actually, the county was who was doing the applications. We entered into an interlocal agreement with the county to pay your share of that project. That equated to 4.4% of the overall costs of the 2011 project. Because it's 100% publicly accessible on the north end of the island, that's attributed to all the public parking, the public parks, access points, allow you to get from from Estero Boulevard to the Gulf. All of those up and get you public access credit. The first thing you have to have is you have to be designated critically eroding, which you are. Secondly, you have to have public access. That section, 2011 project, which is now the current limits of the current project that you've applied for, also 100% publicly accessible, which makes you eligible for 50% state cost sharing. There was a study done as part of that project that determined the ratio of recreational benefits, storm damage reduction benefits of the beach project. It determined 88% of the project was recreational benefits. The TDC kicked in 24%, half of the recreational benefits of the local share, a portion of the storm damage reduction benefits, and then the town picked up the rest, which is how you get to that complicated percentages of who gets to pay for what. As you move further south down the island, we get away from the public parks and the public accesses. That percentage goes way down. In order to have a public access, you have to have a 5-foot wide or more path from the street to the Gulf. Anybody can access publicly on an equal basis. And then as you add parking within a quarter mile of each of those accesses, you gain credit. Bus stops also get you credit. You can have up to 211 feet of publicly accessible shoreline per bus stop, as long as there's a 5-foot wide access within a quarter mile of the bus stop.
Now, the public access, does that have to be added for the public, like a right of way, or can it just be by an agreement with the owner of the access?
It could be an easement with the owner of the property to get you there. As long as that easement period has to extend beyond the life of your funding agreement, which is basically related to your permit. If you get a 10-year permit for a beach project, then you have to have a 10-year long easement to let public go in and out.
And if the condos rent units to vacationers,
That's the last way to get public access is if you are licensed with the Department of Professional Regulation as a vacation rental condo, you have at least 7 units and qualify the length of shoreline of the frontage of your property as publicly accessible. Hotels and motels would count too, but I don't think there's any.
So
The area
Michael,
that
do you
Chad
have
was
any, we are dealing with Leonardo Arms at this moment. Do you have any facts and figures about that particular condo project or not yet?
I don't think they're vacation rental condo. I know you were looking at the different condominiums down there.
Yeah, so I think I saw a few individual units that had been registered with DBPS. Is that your question? Are you asking, has there been a due diligence study with regards to the erosion at Leonardo Arms?
they qualify.
Well, they're looking for relief, and I'm just wondering if this is a private thing, or if it's public, or if it's a private public, or what direction what direction we heading in here with this particular.
I think it's going to probably be private public.
Private public, okay. All
would
right,
be my guess.
that answers my question.
Just for the record, in a prior incident that was going on with Leonardo Arms, my memory says that Leonardo Arms paid for the emergency situation that they had. The town cooperated in granting special permits and things for them to deal with their emergency. There was already a precedent that Leonardo Arms kicked in.
It's good to know.
Just a question on that, because I know there was a pretty significant beach restoration for the south end of the island. Was that different than the triage that you're referencing, Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions of Chad and Michael? Is that your presentation, gentlemen? Much, yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming in, Michael, this morning. Good to see you again, and we'll be in touch. Thanks again.
By the way, I think it was you, Mr. Mayor, who mentioned that the board should reach out to me.
I'm sorry, Roger, before they leave, just a quick question. So this public access equation that it's extremely complicated, that the north end seems to qualify more than the south end, and that's a state process, and I could ask the Vice Mayor the same question. Does the TDC have the same type of equation in terms of how they use their support? In other words, do they utilize all these public access points, public access, assessments as well?
TDC doesn't literally use them, but the funds are often matched to what the state is giving us. If the state isn't kicking in, the TDC is less likely.
If we had a triage issue, went to TDC, they wouldn't necessarily utilize the same state equation in terms of public access.
The emergency situations that I mentioned before with Sanibel were in public areas, not private.
That was my question. So the TDC would view those differently than they would in a.
Yes.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, I did tell members of the board previously that we're using this firm and they have already working on the beach, and that might be a good firm for them to contact to get some additional information.
Very good.
Now, is there any kind of action that the associations could take to improve the outcome of this? I mean, I'm thinking like making a beach access, or changing maybe some of their codes about what they're allowed to do for rentals?
Right. So again, we're suggesting, at least in the case of Leonardo Arms and anybody else for that matter, that rather than have multiple firms giving us multiple recommendations, we're using a particular firm. So we're telling these condominium associations, we're using firm A. They can use any firm they want, but it would seem to me it would make sense for them also to contact firm A. Firm A could then give them guidance about here are things you could do to better access public monies. And to the extent that, as the Vice Mayor said, that we can work with them, of course we would, but think they need to be taking an initial step of their own of reaching out to a consultant and getting some advice. Because the last thing we would want to do is do something that they weren't in favor of doing, or they felt, down the road, they said it caused another adverse action because we did something without walking hand in hand with them. So I do believe the first step would be for them to reach out to either this firm or another firm to get some advice on what things they could do. And then if they decide as a condominium board to implement those things, then we can pick up the ball from there and try to carry it forward.
That's your takeaway, Leonardo Arms. You want to take that back to your board and suggest that that they get in touch with Michael's firm and see if we can do something mutually cooperative between us here. Okay? All right. Yes, sir.
If I could, Michael Poff again, and I certainly appreciate the referral and all. And Leonardo Arms, they did reach out to us, but our policy that if we're working for you, the town, we're not going to work for private property within the potential project limits. The last thing we want to do is put anybody in a conflict of interest. If I could make suggestions right now so that all of the properties down there could be doing this together. And that would be is to answer the question. It's our understanding by talking with Steve Boutel that the TDC follows the state in terms of public access and how funding is distributed. We have worked with other municipalities and other local governments who work with their property owners in their project limits to establish the 5-foot wide public access easements through their properties that line up with bus stops or parking that will get you credit, get you state and TDC funding, and or get yourself qualified as a vacation condo rental through the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, because then the entire frontage of the property counts. All of a sudden, you've just increased your cost sharing significantly. So if you were to map any of the 5-foot wide accesses that exist today or create them in the bus stops, and the vacation rental condo designations, you can add up the length of shoreline. Let's say it's 4,000 feet, just from 203 to 207, 4,000 feet, a rough number. If you were to get 50% of that shoreline that's publicly accessible, and the state would pay 25%, so 50% of the 50, they would pay 25%, and the TDC would pay 25% of the other 50%, leaving you and the private property owners with 25% of the cost.
Michael, can you just clarify with, clearly we can't, for each individual condo who may want to move in that direction. So would that be them working with your peers, not your firm necessarily, but your peers, them to analyze that property and to submit a report that would indicate current criteria they meet and things they could do to get more criteria or more points or whatever the case may be?
Or they wouldn't necessarily even need to hire a firm. I mean, these are pretty straightforward calculations that can be done through the Department of Business and Professional Regulation website, all the properties, and Chad, peeked at a few of them on your behalf. You can find out what the designation is. That's publicly accessible information. Bus stops are all noted on the Lee County Trans maps and all. The only thing they may not know about is if there's a 5-foot wide easement out to the beach, not platted. If it was some kind of easement,
That might be,
that was
my
internal.
concern is, in my dealing with the folks who are on the board at the condo, that they're not gonna be able to do it. I don't know that we're gonna be able to do it for them, so I'm saying that maybe the best bet be for them to reach out to professionals. Not you, that's fine, but for somebody to help them.
And Roger, on that point, Michael, appreciate you asking the client, the town, saying, hey, we'd love to help some of these associations, but that would be a conflict of interest. Don't we, as the client, John, have the ability to decline that conflict of interest? You rightfully approach the client, say we've got somebody else who's approached us, we see a conflict here, unless you were to waive that conflict, which law firms do all the time. Is that possible? Could we waive that conflict, John? I mean, I know you probably want to take a look at it, but.
Yes, but for the same reasons already mentioned by the consultant, I would suggest it's not a good idea. Because it then puts them in the position and if it were to happen, make it absolutely clear, if it were to happen, it then puts the parties in an adversarial relationship that otherwise could be avoided.
There are plenty of firms, I mean, Michael's firm is fantastic, but there are plenty of other firms that they
Well, I
can reach out
appreciate, but
to.
he's done all the work. It would be nice if they could utilize
And
somebody.
anything we have is public record, so they can get access to it.
That's a good point, Roger, yeah.
So now, if they decided to, I don't, maybe if they have a bylaw, it kind of has, I don't know what they have or not, because they're not allowed to rent vacation rentals, can they change that, or does that run afoul with our?
Well,
zoning?
they need to then, you know, they have probably have a board attorney, and I mean, they have to do some legwork to position themselves, maximize their ability to access government funds,
Pencil.
minimize their downstream potential costs for the renourishment effort. Unless, unless the council is ready today or sometime in the future to stand up and say you're going to cover it for them, but there's certain things they have to do.
I'm thinking like, you know, like someone who in a monthly rental area can't start renting out.
That's, I don't think that's the issue. Okay, I think the issue is they have a limitation in their own bylaws. They could correct that. I don't think that would put them afoul, that would put them afoul of the town.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Michael, Chad. That was a very good conversation, and I'm sure there's many more to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on here. We're gonna go to, let y'all take your leave. Thank you for coming down. Thank you.
You find out, but maybe we're not that popular after all.
Can we make a comment or not?
Oh.
That was a clear answer.
But that, yeah, I shouldn't say that. If you want to stay till, if you want to stay till the end of the
No,
meeting.
I find it so interesting
No.
that we have that easement for thousands of people that pay taxes. And that's not eligible compared to a free easement for visitors. Do you see?
I see what you mean.
Thank
Yeah.
you for listening.
Okay. All right. Have a good day.
Can't change it.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearings. First one, I'll just read it. It's ordinance 20-17, special events, an ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending chapters 6, 14, and 34 of the Fort Myers Beach Land Development Code, revising chapter 22 of the Fort Myers Beach Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, codification, scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and providing for an effective date. We're going to open this hearing and then schedule the second reading and final adoption for the January 11th meeting, 9 a.m. Open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak? Jason, did you want to say anything about this?
Sure, sir. How you doing? Jason Green, Community Development. We're, which one are we on here? Okay.
Special events.
So the special events before you is two things for you, is the land development code edits related to special events and some other cleanup, and then obviously amendments to chapter 22 of the Code of Ordinances for the special events. You have your recommendation from the LPA related to the land development code edits. And part of that recommendation was removing 4 and 5 of section 34-3041. And then they also made some comments about, really that have to do with construction staging, which is number 6 under that same subsection. There was no suggested language, just encouraging you to that issue up and revise that as part of this. Other than that, this is the special events section that I know has been worked on for some time and is before. I didn't draft it myself, but we've edited some of this as we've gone to prepare it for you. And look forward to any of your comments or input that you want to make changes, or if it's good.
Questions for Mr. Green?
Yes, Jason, these are my notes on the many meetings I had regarding this.
Yes, thank you.
And I went through all of these trying to answer a question that I couldn't answer. Sarah worked on this and she is no longer with us. The temporary use sections, which is where the LPA suggested that we not delete some things. I believe Sarah recommended those deletions, but I couldn't find why in my notes. Generally, when we it was already somewhere else in the code. So
We could, I think we
I'm
we could
asking-
track her down and
Yeah, I'm
see if we
asking
can
if
reach out to her. between
before the
first and second-
next hearing, if you could contact Sarah and ask her if she remembers why we suggested deleting those two sections.
She's
Or,
hoping you remember, but.
well,
we'll
that
follow
was the
up.
part she worked on. She had the knowledge of temporary uses that I didn't have, and I was kind of on the special events part. So I believe that was the part that she made the recommendations about.
So my conversation with the LPA was that, in line with that, which is in lieu of being a conflict with state or federal law or something like that. That's what I think the recommendation from the LPA was, is other than it being a conflict. So I guess that would be the
But
same
what I'm
question
saying
to
is,
you.
I think it's already, might be somewhere else.
Right.
We were trying to remove duplicative language. So that might have been the reason, and if we could just check with Sarah as to what her logic was, because I can tell you in working with her, she was excellent. She didn't recommend stupid things. So I'm sure she had a really good reason for why she did that, and I'd hate to just, without her input,
Vice Mayor, you are correct, and a question was asked of staff by the LPA in particular, just to point out section 34-3046, which is completely stricken through temporary use of mobile home. There is another section of the code that talks about how long you can have a temporary mobile home for purposes of using it as your primary residence during reconstruction. Plus, we inform the LPA that it's very common that when there is an emergency declaration, ability to have mobile homes as temporary housing is provided for in those emergency orders at the state level and then at the local level. And that's why it was deleted from this section, because language already existed somewhere else.
Oh,
You are
but-
correct.
But the LPA is disagreeing with, they want to have duplicative language then?
Somewhat, yes. I think part of the conversation is your local regulations can be different and can be alone, and case that John gave as an example, if it doesn't work itself into a state protection here. That was
I thought
a
he said that
summary.
it also existed elsewhere in our code.
That was a summary of the LPA's conversation.
Well, I think our best bet is to reach out to Sarah and at least be able at the second reading, come back to you and explain her rationale, her recommendations
I'd like to
for
hear
you to consider second reading.
Any more questions of Mr. Green?
I've got a couple, and this is mostly try to help me understand some of this. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Okay.
You did see.
The first one is in section 22:1, you start out, it says "an activity." Should that be any activity?
Are you on the updated one that we received?
I am not, but it's the first section of, I have like, there's two copies in here, and I was trying to work with the attorney to figure out which one. But the area that was stricken out where it says special event says any activity, and the area they replaced it with says unactivity. So it's a trivial thing, probably maybe a typo.
I don't think it's a typo. We lifted that language from another town. We're defining what a special event is. Special event is a single thing, an activity. Or,
Even though the previous definition was any activity.
well, we didn't like the previous definition and we
Okay,
were
I'm just-
trying to
like I
improve
said,
it.
Just asking for a clarification.
Yeah.
The other thing is, okay, I'm reading through the activities and it kind of gives, the summary is as long as you're, as long as you're not impeding flow of pedestrian or vehicular traffic and you're not using any kind of public property for anything, then you have some exemptions. But then, and it's in 22:1, then 22:6 mentions farmer markets and flea markets, which on our island are usually on private property.
Can impede the flow of traffic. I am personally familiar with, and that's the reason we put it in, that
Okay.
the farmer's market has backed up traffic on Estero Boulevard, so therefore they would fit within the definition of.
I was kind of reading is like, these are exemptions, but these are 22:6 is the ones where you do need it, even if it
Yes.
is exempted on 22:1.
Yeah. And John, what is the difference with the updated one?
It's just, an issue of formatting
Okay,
and moving, things substantively. There are, no significant changes between it, but, it's formatted in a way that is going to make it easier for Municipal Code Corporation to codify it.
just wanted to make sure there weren't any
That's it.
meaningful changes.
And Jo- and
And I have
John did
printouts if
inform
you
me,
want those.
John did inform me there was a new copy, but I already had a considerable investment in sticky. Go back at that point. And one other question I have is on 22-2, where it was changed to say that, in my reading, that someone may promote or advertise an event before they get the permit. So that was specifically changed. I'm just thinking that, or is it no? Am I reading that wrong? Actually, I'm reading that wrong. Never mind.
Okay. Anything else?
Me.
Councilman Adderholt.
Just a parliamentary inquiry, John, I guess. I watched the LPA hearing, and there was significant conversation about whether the town should require a permit for a garage sale. The LPA struck that language. Is the version that's going to second reading, does that version continue to strike that language?
No, they recommended that the ordinance it comes to you as, as written by staff, which provides for the need to get a permit for a garage sale. We want to make it very clear that the LPA recommended deleting that. Thought it was onerous. Already have it. That really was the answer. Now, whether or not it's working properly, that's a different issue. But we currently have a regulation in effect that requires anyone having a garage sale to obtain a permit from the city. From the town.
On how many permits has the town authorized in 2020 thus far for garage sales?
That I don't know.
Has the town issued any permits for garage sales in 2020?
I don't know the number. I don't know if we've had any applications for.
Okay. So either we're not enforcing what's perceived as a regulation, or people aren't applying, and therefore theoretically violating the town's policy. I would just, as one counselor, support the LPA's recommendation to strike this language from the from this particular version as it goes to second reading.
And Jim, just so you know, the committee that worked on this was kind of ambivalent about the whole garage sale
I
issue.
remember, I listened to that, yes.
And we put it in just so you know that other communities do include it. We didn't have strong feelings one way or the other about whether it was in or out.
I would say to the vice mayor, if we could strike that language, this ordinance will have my full 100% strong support. We could probably save an hour of our lives debating garage sales, but that's just my personal thought.
Is there any consensus amongst the group today?
Agree with Councilmember Adderholt.
I think I know of one instance when there was somebody who was having, a garage sale every week first. I think that's what it's trying to avoid, is somebody who makes a business out of having a garage sale.
You're absolutely right. And I thought long and hard about that because I listened to the LPA debate, and I thought possibly not the most efficient, but I'm always challenged when the kindergarten teacher makes all the kids stay in for recess because one child misbehaves. So I hate to require permits of the whole town because one or two people on the island are abusing the limit of 2 garage sales a year. It's a legitimate concern, Councilor Veach. And so what I was wondering is the town, since the language is somewhat vague and could be enforced, if somebody filed a complaint and code enforcement went out and they said, okay, we've been out there once, unfortunately the neighbor would have to file it again, but on that third time they would technically be in violation of the town's ordinance, which is vague. But at least that's some way to prevent what you're talking about, because I think that's a concern. It doesn't seem to be pervasive across the island. So instead of making every single person on the island get a permit for a garage sale, maybe we could handle it that way, maybe, just thinking out loud.
Taking away the permit requirement, but keeping the restriction.
Yes.
Consensus, is there any feeling about that, one way or the other?
I realize that probably makes enforcement, like you said, a little more difficult. But I think that I agree with that.
Okay, all right. Just consensus there. Okay, I opened the public comment earlier. I never closed it. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this? Getting up to speak, Mr. Schaub? Okay, good. Wasn't sure if you were getting up to do something else.
I can practice a little more, I guess.
All righty.
For the record, my name is Chris Schaub. I don't know whether this special event covers this or not. I tried to read through it on my laptop this weekend and couldn't find anything about it, but hearing the council or somebody said could be a one-person event. There's something that goes on the beach that bothers a lot of people, and it's quite regular. I believe me, I have no problem whether you're Baptist, Catholic, Presbyterian, or whatever. But there's a man that will come out with video cameras and megaphones and preach. I just know for a fact that when I listen to the people around me, it really offends a lot of people to have that broadcast over a megaphone. What reasons he has to do it, and all be debated, but I don't know whether that's something in a special events.
I don't know that it is either.
Maybe I'm too late because of the first reading already been done, but it is. I've seen a lot of people complain about it. It offends them.
All right, thank you very much.
I want to say.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, we're going to close the public comment. Get back to the council. Is there anything further to add to this that we haven't already beaten up on here? Not, we'll move this to the second reading and final adoption on January 11th.
I think we need to have a motion and
A motion to move it on.
I'll move that we schedule ordinance -20-17 for a second and final hearing on January 11th at 9 a.m.
I'll second.
As amended.
as amended.
Seconded.
Second, as amended.
Any further discussion? Any objection? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so the next ordinance is 2018 Water Supply Facilities Work Plan, an ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, adopting amendments to the Town of Fort Myers Beach Comprehensive Plan Utilities element to update data and analysis and the goals, objectives, and policies related to water supply planning requirements of Chapter 163 Florida statutes, providing for severability, Scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and providing for an effective date. Public hearing is open.
Morning, Jason Green, Community Development. I'll just give a brief intro and summary, and Tim can kind of summarize what they did real brief. Essentially, it's an edit to the utilities element. We are required as a town to do that, and they can go with statutory requirements a little bit for you. This completes that process. It'll go off to DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity. That's what you're transmitting it to. They'll do a review, then they'll send back any comments or approval, acceptance of it, and then it'll come back before you for a final adoption. Hopefully March 1st or whichever the first meeting after we receive your comments and can advertise. Again, most of the changes were updates to data analysis and then some goals, objectives, and policies, and that's going to be evaluated. The town's got a little bit of easier process since we buy bulk water. Another community that may be generating and creating water. It's a little bit more complicated when you have to do that. I don't know if Tim, you want to add to it. But what's presented to you is what they've completed, Tetra Tech, as being satisfying the state statute requirements for the water.
So just in English, what we have to do is prove that we have a water source for the town's properties.
So you look at population, you look at need, demand, you look at conservation, you look at other things like that to ensure providing sufficient water for a 10-year.
Questions? Yes.
On the bottom of page 128, we are deleting the section that says the town should take the lead by example by installing ultra-low flow plumbing fixtures, et cetera. Why did we delete that?
That's now actually a Florida Building Code requirement.
We have to anyway.
It's redundant.
Thank you.
Other questions of the staff?
No, we get our water from Lee County, right? Lee County is doing quite a bit of development. I hear a lot of talk about, potential problem with water supply due to getting rid of the recharge points. And I know this is not really a part of this document, but are we at risk because of maybe if Lee County gets overextended with their water usage?
Well, they need, the way it works is that they need to be documenting to the state every time they grant a development, they have the capacity to supply that new development with water. So that's how that process works. So theoretically, they're not finishing our water supply to provide water supply to them. But, how Lee County manages it, I can't tell you but that's what they should be technically.
The questions of the staff? Thank you very much. Open it up to the public for public comment. Is there any public comment to this matter?
I forgot to mention, if any public listening or watching want to be notified directly when DEO responds, they can direct notice.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the public wish to comment? If not, we'll close that. Is there a motion to move this on to the second reading and final adoption?
Move to at ordinance 20-18 for second hearing and final adoption on March 1st, 2021 at 9 a.m.
Second. Moved and second. Any further discussion? Objection? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next one is ordinance 20-19, height and setback requirements. Ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending the definitions in the Fort Myers Beach Land Development Code and amending Division 3 of Article 3 of Chapter 34 of the Fort Myers Beach Land Development Code entitled Explanation of Property Development Regulations for All Zoning Districts, revising height and setback requirements, providing for severability, codification, Scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and providing for an effective date. Public hearing is open.
Again, Jason Green, Community Development. What you have before you is draft changes to, as you mentioned, several sections of Chapter 34 of the Land Development Code. It is essentially draft that was presented back in March. I think it was February, March. There were some meetings and council conversations. There's a couple of things that were left unfinished just after that meeting. So I believe it was about 5 days later when emergency orders were flying around after that. Essentially what it does is it incorporates the items that were agreed to by the council then and completes there's a question about when to increase the setback. So the conversation has been going from 7.5 to 10 feet at what lot width was one of the items. And so 70 seemed to be the consensus at that time, even though it wasn't correctly finished, but 70 is what's in here as being 70 feet and wider. We'll have a 10-foot side yard setback, and less than that, we'll have a 7.5.
About irregular lots, how do you measure the 70 feet if the lot is not rectangular?
So there's another section of the code that talks about how to measure, where do you measure that setback? Where do you measure the width of the lot? So generally it's at the setback. So the setback, when you set back about 25 feet, that's not there. It's one of the things we'll also be bringing back to you later on is that the right way to measure the lot width. So you might have pie-shaped lots, you might have some other it's on the street setback and then the width at that point.
Further questions of the staff?
Didn't mean to interrupt you though.
No, it's all right. So that was one of the main issues was the setback, the 7.5 moving to a 10 feet when it's 70 feet or wider. There's also some revisions in here talking that were consensus of height. It adds 5 feet to the maximum height, but then measures from a different point, the median or the mean and the roof line, which is more consistent with some of the communities around us and how.
While Jason's looking, just to perhaps give you some comfort. Any lot could come in and ask you for a deviation through our application process. Or even if it doesn't meet our criteria that you may be establishing today, it doesn't prohibit someone from coming through our application process, ask for a deviation, would go to LPA and ultimately to the council to consider. So what you're basically creating is the rule, and then people can try to apply for an exception if they feel their situation warrants that.
Jason, given what Roger just said, we're in a coffee shop and someone says, hey, I saw something about this setback requirement thing on the agenda. What does that mean in English? What's the practical impact of what we're passing today for those who might be watching?
It's an attempt to try to create a carrot, so to speak, to think of setbacks and height in a different way. So what's included also in this is provisions where not just going to the 10 feet for the wider lots, but if you want to get a third livable story, want to get an additional 5 feet of height on top of what we're already changing is the max height, there's carrots, so to speak, things in here that say if you do A, B, and C, then you can get those. It was trying to create opportunities for flexibility in design without having the massive towers, the 15-foot architectural towers that people were complaining about mostly. Because those 15 feet on top of the height that we already have is what most of the complaints we're hearing is it's overpowering to the person that's next door.
It's basically what it's trying to do is saying that if you're willing to bring your building in from the sides, make the side setbacks wider, qualify for more height. That's open up the view corridors and not have this thing where basically you're in house A and you can hand a cup of kitchen to house B through one of the windows because you're so close together.
Very well said. I think both Councilor Allers and I were on the LP when this thing went through and fully support it. This concept of if you go over our South Bridge and you go past Lover's Key and you go into Bonita on Hickory there, you'll see these giant boxes with no space in between, no ability to see the ocean, no view corridor to see the ocean. And I would just say, this is just an attempt. It's an incentive, if you will, to try to, for those opportunities left to build, to try to create some view corridors, some ability for air and sun in between buildings in a way that is not punitive, but it provides incentives. I was just struck yesterday, I was coming out of Publix, and I'm still new enough here where on the island where you come out of Publix, just picture yourself in a car coming out of Publix, look right across the street, and there's a condo there called Seaside. You can see underneath there, because the whole first floor is open with the exception of some pillars, and you can see the ocean beautifully. More we can encourage that, maybe not to that extent, because that's a pretty unique situation. I just think it creates an openness in our island, and it sort of democratizes that view of the beach in ways that people driving along Estero could occasionally catch a glimpse of the water where possible. I think it's a real positive step in the right direction.
I echo those comments. If you call it the ocean one more time, I'm going to give you demerits.
Fair enough.
Just so I understand kind of what we're talking about here is that, okay, so there's a couple different sections, but if the second livable floor comes in 5 feet and they can get 5 feet more height, if they want another floor, that means they basically have to shorten it somehow.
So the height limitations within the current code, so the number of stories and the height don't really match. You physically get 3 livable stories within a lot of the height that we allow, but you're not allowed to have that third. This is just saying, this allows for the option if you do certain things or, and it gives you options. I think to your point, LPA version from last year had a list of things that you had to do, get those. Now it's a little bit less than that. You have to do one item and you have a choice of 2 or 3 other items. It gives that flexibility of design. It's not mandating, such as enclosing the entire bottom. If you leave part of that open, a large part of that, then that's one option. But yes, so the point of it was you can physically, if the architect or whoever designing can get 3 stories in there, you can do that additional setback, then allowing them to do that when physically the number of feet that we allow does allow potentially for it.
It's not just setback from the base, it's also setback with subsequent floors.
Correct. So there's the tier effect is part of the options that you can, and how far you go and how many steps you want and how much height you want. Yes.
And then I understand the intent of that is so you have not blocking as much sunlight, plus it gives you hopefully more interesting architecture than the big blocks that.
Right, right, correct. It prevents or tries to prevent the complaint that we've had, which is the massing of the flat side towering over other properties. That creates a visual that's appealing, according to the complaints we've had.
I also noticed that there's a vegetation, the side yard.
Right, that was a big discussion in the March meeting. There was originally, it was 4 to 12 feet was trying to be open, and the council at that point just picked 6 feet.
So that means if there are 2 large houses that are next to each other, that the vegetation between them is 6 feet tall. Is that the way I'm reading that?
Correct. That's what that, right. They were going back and forth on multiple meetings between the 4 to 12 foot of max, put it to 6.
Right.
Pull it to a fence.
Oh, it's going to be shade-loving vegetation down there.
Well, it's blocking. It's the screening part of it. You're allowed to have some trees grow above that. It's just visual screening of a hedge, which it matches the fence height. So
Just to be clear, so if we're going to try to create more space between 2 houses, it's see-through, but then you're going to block the view through the use of landscape, we really haven't accomplished anything. The idea is to create the space and then also create the view corridor.
The building's that high, I don't see privacy being an issue anyway. I mean, like you said, even the buildings are next to each other. If they're 25 feet up in the air, you're going to get a vegetation screen then.
Again, this is something that someone voluntarily decides to do. So they're making that decision that this is in their use of their property.
But people can do what they're doing now. This is an additional option.
I'd just like to say for the record that one of the most common things that people have come to me about as a council person are the monstrosity, ugly houses that are now beginning to make our island look like Hickory Boulevard. It's a consistent complaint that I get. In my opinion, this ordinance does not go far enough to help that. It's a compromise. So I'm willing to vote for it so that at least we have something, but I have been advocating all along to go further than this. One of the things that I would like to see staff work on in the future is the footprint issue. Our current code allows this huge footprint. It doesn't include the pool and all those pavers, et cetera, be part of the footprint, when in reality it is. I mean, the entire lot is covered with non-natural elements. So I'd like to see us go further with some other things that could help this issue in the future. But this is a compromise. I believe in compromise, and I'm in favor of moving forward with it.
Aren't there already some regulations to how much impervious surface you can put on a lot?
Yes, and what I've seen personally is that the people start out doing that, and then 6 months later, after the final inspection has occurred, they come in and they put pavers all over where they didn't have pavers before. We need to strengthen that somehow, where those kind of things are included in the footprint.
Any other questions of staff? Thank you. Open it up for public comment. Anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this ordinance? Hearing none, we'll close that, and I'll entertain a motion to move this to the public hearing, final adoption.
Okay, I'll move ordinance 20-19 to be scheduled for a second hearing and final adoption on January 11th, 2021 at 9 a.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Objection? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the administrative agenda. Item A is the replacement vehicle. Approve the purchase of the replacement vehicle from Sam Galloway Ford in the amount of $40,457.25 as budgeted in fiscal year 20 budget. Piggybacking Lee County contract ITB 160545 and authorizing auction of the old van to replace 2011 Ford F-350 XL passenger van. Is there a motion to approve this transaction and action?
I'll make a motion to approve the van.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Objection? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is B, wire transfer policy and procedures. Approval of wire transfer policy and procedures as recommended by the external auditors. Is there a motion to approve this policy and procedures?
I think we continued this previously because there had been disagreement from the audit committee, and we were going to go back and try to mend some fences with them about it.
That's the following item.
Was that the following item?
Yeah, that's.
My apologies.
Mr. Mayor and council members, this wire transfer policy replaces or updates the previous policy which was dated 2014. Kind of outdated, particularly with respect to electronic fund transfers and detail of those. So on basis recommendation from our auditors, we're more or less updating this, and the audit committee did approve this.
This is Walter Pierce, ladies and gentlemen. For those who haven't met our new finance director, I don't know if you all have met Walter yet.
Yes.
Okay, you have. Okay, good. Okay, well, let's dispatch this item, and then we'll get to the investment policy. Okay, is there a motion to approve this transfer policy and procedures as recommended by the external auditors?
So moved.
Moved? Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection? That passes unanimously. Okay, now the next item is the investment policy. This is to rescind the town investment policy, to prevent misunderstanding on how the town should invest and report on any excess funds available. Also to avoid continued audit noncompliance. Now, Finance Director Pierce, if you want to take us through this.
Just in summary, this has been discussed by Mr. Lang and some other finance staff to the audit committee that, you know, this policy kind of handcuffs us and the town, particularly not just with respect to training, you know, that requirement's been met, but you know, what do we provide as far as a investment report? And I addressed the committee. I just kind of made the case that, you know, it's a good policy, but I just don't think it's applicable for the present investment situation that the town now faces. So I've done a couple of investment reports and monthly, quarterly to various cities and towns that I've worked for. And in those cases, your unassigned fund balance is well in excess of or is significant. Ours here at the town is, we're hoping at the end of September, this is right around $2 million. Well, that 2 million might sound like a lot, but that we use that money up front to pay projects and then hope we get reimbursed timely to replenish that. So it's a constant in or out. There's not a whole lot available there to invest. So doing a financial or an investment report is just, you know, not, I mean, it's just not where we are right now financially. Hopefully in the future, that unassigned fund balance continues to grow. I gave the example of Madeira Beach, that figure is 10 million. It's unassigned. And yes, we have that spread amongst 4 or 5 different banks. Yes, then you do want to do an investment a report, which I did quarterly, which lists the yield, how much are we making in those various banks. So after providing this information and a lot of discussion with the committee,
Yes.
they decided to repeal it, but we are working out a compromise, which is a finance policy reporting policy, which I think the committee wants just timely reports, particularly that lists debt and what the debt picture is, and a little bit of cash flow management statistics or facts as well.
That was very well said. As you're aware, council members, I'm the liaison to the audit committee. And this particular item was hashed out quite a bit, and under the guidance of Mayor Hughes, the chairman of the committee, an agreement was reached that was came up with by Council Member Steele, Jim Steele, as somewhat of a compromised language, which will eliminate any apprehensions on either side to the situation right now. That's in the works, and everybody is in agreement about it right now, and all we're doing is giving them our blessing right now with this. Did I get that right,
Yes.
Finance Director?
Yes,
Okay,
Mayor.
all right. Okay, any further discussion about this? Okay, if not, is there a motion to rescind the investment policy to prevent
Just for the
misunderstanding?
record, I think the vote was 6-1, is that correct?
Yes, the vote was 6-1.
Yes, and the one against was more on a technical issue, which really wasn't absolutely germane to the issue at hand.
I'll make a motion to rescind the town investment policy.
Move and second it. Any further discussion? Objection? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Finance Director Pierce.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is item D, which is Matanzas Inn CPD. This is to determine if the Matanzas Inn Commercial Plan Development Project has conditions of approval for phased development. Mr. Green.
More time, Jason Green, Community Development. Before you is a request by the property owner for you to consider the basically analysis and whether you agree with his assessment of meeting condition number 5 of the original CPD. He has a building permit waiting. I forget what the size of that structure is, but it's been held up at this point simply because of the timing. And conditions 5, I'll read that to you briefly so you can, that's really what the discussion point is going to be, is he has submitted his letter of what he's done on the property. And, believes that satisfies the initial part of condition 5. Parcel A may be developed in phases in any order, but a certificate of compliance for the initial phase must be reasonably requested no more than 60 months following the town council approval of this amended CPD. Town council approval was September 9th, 2015. That's why we're before you, because of that 5-year timeline. There's a question about whether if that condition is satisfied, that first part of it, then the second half kicks in, and he has the remaining time, the total 60 more months to complete the entire project. If not, then he has to come back before you for a CPD for the site concept plan for that CPD. I'll turn it over to the property owner, and over and explain to you what he's done on the property.
What was staff recommendation on that, Jason?
This is one of those PDs. There's a couple of them in the same time frame, about 10, 12, 15 years ago. It's very difficult to tell the phasing on the. There's a lot of existing structures, existing improvements, with drawings of buildings that are going to be over and raised. And it's really almost impossible to tell what was going to be done and what phase is a phase. There hasn't been any, I don't believe there's been any vertical construction of buildings. I think there's been some remodeling, some other things. So it was really hard for us to tell what the intent of that phasing plan would be.
We would never recommend that type of agreement to you. It's too vague. It's not well enough defined so that we would never create an agreement that we would get yeah, after 5 years, we couldn't tell if the conditions were met. We would set up an agreement so that whatever the timeframe the town council, the LPA recommended town council and town council ultimately approved, that we would know that you either hit the mark or missed the mark within that timeline. So that's why we're here today. For whatever reason, it was done the way it was done. And I guess our choice is to sort of ride this out to its point or to bring it back for further review, further refinement, so that sometime in the future, these decisions will be clearer.
The resolution I'm looking at is from 2015. I know it was just an amendment. We had the opportunity to iron these things out then and didn't.
So it was approved well before that, and then in the 15, what ended up happening, from the records, it looks like it kind of restarted the clock. So actually, those conditions were there from before. Forget the original date, maybe it was 2009. So there's been a lot of revisions. That's what also makes this thing a little more complicated. In 2015, it restarted that clock. Yes, I would agree with you that should have been probably addressed for clarity at that point.
Mr. York, wants to say anything?
Hi, good morning. For the record, I'm Doug Spearensmith. I'm the property owner at Matan.
Sorry, Doug.
Thank you for your time today on this, and I regret that perhaps overly complicated. We did the amendment in 2015. We had the simple idea of just adding a parcel to the and then change the phasing plan a little. That approval got complicated, and a whole bunch of changes to the CPD agreed to, and the language changed, basically rewritten. And it took on the character of the staff at the time, and Rexanne, you were on council. And it actually, what I thought was going to be simple got complicated. So we did an awful lot of hearing time and council time, labor time, trying to sort out all the things. We've just been operating under, since the 2015 approval, we've just been trying to operate under what we weren't very happy with the language at all. But we had agreed to it, and we got the development order. Redevelopment plan is complicated. Underlying circumstances of timing got complicated. There was phasing relating to the restaurant expansion. There was phasing on the redevelopment of the existing hotel, which we are trying to do with this permit. So we've been operating, I think, in good faith, and I think we've done an awful lot of positive things, right? But I think this language is confusing, and I think cautious. The reason to put everybody under notice, but it should go to council, and we did not want to, frankly, resubmit it as another amendment to clarify the issue, because the only thing we're trying to resolve is the rest of the development order, working with the town on the sidewalks on Crescent Street, trying to coordinate our construction with the reconstruction of Crescent Street. There's been an awful lot of discussion, and it has been complicated, and I certainly underestimated how complicated this is. But I think we are pretty close to crossing the finish line, and we wanted to come in front of you. If there is any questions, I'd be happy to address.
Questions of Mr. Spearensmith? Questions?
Oh, go ahead.
I don't have a question for Mr. Spearensmith, but request motion, I don't know who wrote it, but it seems to be really vague and all-encompassing. If this is just a timing issue, then I'd be willing to do a motion that says something about timing, but this motion says that they've met the conditions, which kind of implies that beyond timing, that there are other, that we're finding they've met all of these conditions that were put in place in 2015. So I guess the motion kind of bothers me. It seems large and vague. Are you following me, John?
No, I am. I was just, I'm certainly, I read the blue sheet and approved its placement on the agenda. But as there's this discussion, I'm somewhat concerned that you all are ultimately going to be asked to make a determination whether or not this project is or isn't in compliance with the DO in a generic sense. And to that extent, that's that it needs to be, kind of roll back and say, well, let's put everyone under oath, because I think it falls within the confines of being quasi-judicial hearing, because you're going to be making findings of fact on this particular piece of this particular development order. But we can continue it to the next meeting and set it up in that manner. But you're being asked to, as I understand it, to review the DO and based upon what you've heard, make a determination whether or not the property owner is in compliance with the timeframes, the benchmarks, lack of a better description, in the DO to make it so that it continues to be a valid, active development order. And that certainly would be a quasi-judicial nature. So we can either retroactively swear in the witnesses, Mr. Green and the property owner, or we can potentially, if you still have questions or are uncomfortable with the information available to you to make that decision, is to put it back on a future agenda as a quasi-judicial public hearing item, swear in the witnesses, and get more information from your staff before, as well as the property owner, before you move forward.
What would your recommendation be? Which of those two choices?
My fail-safe advice is always be more conservative. So I would say that at bare minimum, if you move forward, is to swear in the witnesses.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
So we could, it's 12:15. This gentleman's been here for 3 hours and 15 minutes. So we could today have them sworn in and resolve this today, then
Sir.
Stay within your comfort level?
Well, not only my comfort level, but your comfort level that you have enough information to make a decision.
I meant procedurally, we could stay within
Yes,
your
sir.
comfort level. Okay.
So I was going to say that we're basically being asked to make a determination that the staff could not determine.
Well, let's ask them again. Let's ask that question again, because I tried to get that out of Jason. We need a little bit more help, Jason.
What we're asking you for is if you find what he's done in improvements meets the intent of the condition that was approved by council, previous council.
I know you don't like the way it was set up in the past, and I understand that. But given that, and given your analysis of the situation, are you comfortable recommending that the council move forward?
I mean, us moving forward with, you mean is what our recommendation of yes, whether he has or not?
Yes.
His well, he hasn't been sworn, but his testimony was about the kitchen remodel and some of those, and if those are in called out phases in the plan, potentially meets the intent of, and it said any phase. That's where the conflict comes in. Did that really mean what improvements were supposed to be included?
So we could go through that with him under oath and resolve it today, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have real reservations about this on several levels. First of all, are we following some process that's set forth in our code? It doesn't seem to me that we are, because nothing's cited that gives him the right to come in and ask to do this. It seems like staff is just being nice and letting him do it.
I asked that question of Mr. Green when he first came over. I asked him if there's a code provision, and I can't tell you off the top of my head right now without looking at the code, which I can do in a 2-minute search, because I do have the code up. But I would defer to Mr. Green on that question. While I look it up.
Why don't we hear from Mr. Green and then you do your research there?
So really the process that the property owner and I have been discussing is staff could do findings, say denial or approval, so let's call it a denial. No, we don't believe that you've met the intent of that condition. Again, that's the trouble when you're always interpreting a condition by a body. You have to administratively make that decision. Then he could have appealed it, been before you doing the same thing that we're doing. Process, we just discussed coming before you as a council, look and read the condition that was approved by a council and make. We kind of, I don't want to say we skipped that part of it, but those are the two before you for discussion.
Well, that
Again,
seems.
I struggle with the getting into the interpretation of language, specifically approved conditions, right? It's not land development code stuff where there's a specific process. This is a specific condition, unique language that was approved by a council and adopted in a public.
It seems kind of loosey-goosey to me how we're doing this. I can tell the rest of my council members that when this came before us in 2015, Mr. Spear and Smith may say it was simple. No one else saw it that way. We had a ton of public interaction regarding CPD. And I feel like if we go forward with this today, that a lot of people are going to be unhappy that had input into this before. Was hesitancy from folks about TDC issue because of lack of public notice and input. I mean, we had hours of hearings about this previously. We had, in my memory, dozens of people who came and gave public comment about this. So I don't, the process is making me uncomfortable, and B, the way it's come through is also making me uncomfortable.
Anybody else feel the same way as the vice mayor?
I agree. I would like to have it moved on and take a little better look at it. This, for the staff's perspective also. Because I'll admit, I'm not 100% up on what was talked about in 2015, so I'd like to go back and take a little look at it and see.
Seems to me that staff should be giving us a denial before this comes to us. Or a denial that says, we're denying this because we're not sure of what this means. I mean, you could be that neutral in your denial, but why it's being appealed to us when you haven't denied it doesn't seem to, you appeal to the council when there's been a denial.
Other comments on that?
Just, okay, one kind of question. So I'm kind of trying to read through this condition 5 where it says, phases in any order, but a certificate of compliance for the initial phase must be reasonably requested no more than 60 months following town council approval. So the vagueness there is in this initial phase. So he has applied for some certificate of compliance for something.
Correct. If you look on page 229, that's the letter that he provided that outlines some of the items that he believes are completed that satisfy that condition. So there's things such as initial expansion of the restaurant in late May 16. There's, he references some hurricane damage and some other things. There's some items in there that he's referenced as his argument of why they satisfy that condition.
And they have been, he has applied for a certificate of compliance.
Those have been completed, right? Yep.
All right, counsel, the question before us then is, do we put these two gentlemen under oath and dispatch this today, or do we set it for another hearing at some future date?
Are you looking for a motion?
I
I'll
guess
move that we
suffice.
move this to a future date and that a staff report be included and that we conduct it as a quasi-judicial hearing.
For second?
I'll second that.
Move and second. Discussion.
Just to be clear, we're not go back and we're not revisiting this entire approval. We're just looking at whether or not he qualifies. Section 5.
Whether he's complied with a lot of stuff.
Good.
I may say two things. The reason I felt this wasn't a big issue was when we used up 1,000 feet of our restaurant expansion and we pay our impact fees and we and the restaurant, I thought that would qualified as a phase 1. or at least, something, because we used up some of our approvals, we paid our money, and we built the building. So it was sort of not even on my radar, to be honest. And time goes on, we're operating under the DO, where we trying to satisfy all of staff's comments. We're not asking you to, attest to that we're complied with every condition of the approval, or even the DO, because staff can do that. They can
That's
hold
what the
us
motion says, Doug.
So we're asking you, or I'm asking you to accept that the efforts to date and the expansion of the restaurant 2016 met phase one, and the 5-year clock doesn't matter. The 10-year clock still is running. Anyway, there's lots of nuances in the final building permit approval that will have to be figured out, including the final sidewalk plan. And we still have work to do, but it's been on hold for a long time while we're trying to sort out.
And with all due respect to Mr. Smith, normally what would happen is he would have a land planning professional who would come in and say, here are the things we were supposed to do, and we'd make a presentation to you and show you, here's where we met, we check off box 1, and here where we check off box 2, and here where we check off box 3, and all that. And the staff would have that information then analyze and do our recommendation. In this particular case, we have his narrative type point letter that's coming from him, which of course is not going to say I didn't do it. It's his property. So that's what we have to work with. So it's like it's not a clear record. And rather than force him to fight the sort of uphill battle of denial, we come to many of these meetings, and many of you know I was on council, or I watch council meetings all the time. I've been here, and I remember this, and this is what was said and done, and this is sort of the unofficial history of the particular item, which is why it's on the agenda today. We have no problem bringing it back to date, and we would encourage Mr. Smith to go ahead and get a professional to document that, his accomplishments, and where he met all the requirements, so we can analyze that and review that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Vice Mayor, I'm going to ask you please to restate your motion, and we'll move on with this.
If I remember correctly, my motion was that we continue this matter to a future hearing, which will be conducted in a quasi-judicial manner, and that blue sheet will include a staff report. I don't remember if I said anything else. That was it. Thank you, Amy.
Dan, you seconded that?
I second that, yes.
Any further discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion?
I object. I like the fact that the town's trying to work informally with this business owner in good faith, and I appreciate the vice mayor wanting to flesh this out more as well. But I don't want to discourage this approach by the town for an informal approach to trying to solve these kind of problems.
I think it's an interesting comment, considering you were the guy who wanted more public input about bathrooms. And yet we had a lot of public input on this.
I'm just voting no. If you want to disparage me every time I vote, that's fine. That's your right. But I'm just voting no. I stated why my objection is. You can compare it to every other vote. You're not always going to get a 5-0 vote. So I don't think it's necessary to make disparaging comments anytime a member votes.
My apologies, Mr. Adderhold. Didn't mean to be disparaging.
Okay, I'm also going to vote against the motion, only because town attorney said that we were well within our wherewithal and rights to do what was going to be done today, and I value his opinion. So anyhow, so the motion wins with a vote of 3-2.
Well,
Vote?
No,
reconsidering?
no, I'm not necessarily reconsidering. I understand what Vice Mayor's saying. I just think that, you know, it almost seems like it's putting in the context that we are going through and doing this, when it seems like what I'm reading in this section 5, it's sufficiently vague to favor the builder to say that, you know, initial phase could be anything, and if he's got a certificate of compliance, I get the impression that he's coming, I don't want to put words in his mouth, because he just doesn't want to get too far down the road and then find out this is going to be a problem for him. So-
Let me just correct that because it's an important fact. He has come in for another building permit under this process. The staff is not granted until
okay.
this issue gets resolved.
Okay, so the motion carries 3-2. Next item,
I haven't
we
voted
still
yet.
voted.
I'm still
I
getting-
thought we did vote. I'm sorry. I thought
So,
we did vote.
but that essentially,
we're still under
the
discussion.
permits he's asking for are ones that were granted 5 years ago. Part of this, under this umbrella, it's under this development order.
Yes. Yes, assuming you're comfortable that the preceding conditions were met. Yes.
No, I think I'll vote in favor for it, just because I think I had a little more time to hear what the staff has to say and clarify some things would be.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, the, well voted, the motion carries 3-2. Okay. The next item is final public comment. Anyone from the public wish to comment? Mr. Schaub has stood up once again, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm gonna talk about your item. So, Mr. Mayor, if you'll.
Actually, it was a public comment about our traffic situation.
Go ahead.
Because we've talked about traffic for I don't know how long, Ray? 30 years, 35 years?
More than that.
I don't know what the problem is driving out to Sanibel and see how they took care of a lot of their traffic problems. I'm gonna be a little bit like your lobbyist. I have nothing against the sheriff's department. They have never arrested me. But I see a difference between the sheriff's department doing this and Sanibel Island doing this. I know it's a four-way at Sanibel. And I know that you'll never put the traffic onto this island like you want. But to get it off of this island, be tremendously improved by just looking at what Sanibel does. They have somebody at the four-way, they have somebody at the next intersection, and you talk about the cost of this with the sheriff's department. We have base, beach and street enforcement. It could be used at peak times. Oh, they're not deputized. I'm sorry about that. We've given them code responsibilities, code officer responsibilities. I don't know. I didn't realize that the people on Sanibel weren't actually, they don't look like. But my point is we'll never get the traffic onto the island the way you want to. It's just not possible to funnel that much traffic in. To get it off, there's got to be some relief somehow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, for saving me some trouble here. I don't know what you're gonna say. The yellow light hasn't gone off yet, but I'll take
You're allowed
responsibility.
to stop before the yellow light goes off.
Okay, I'll take responsibility, like I say, for my actions. It's gonna cost me a lot. The longer it drags on, the more thousands of dollars it will be. I take that. No further excuses, because it's gonna turn red. Anyway, thank you for
Thank
your
you,
time.
Chris. No. Just for everybody's edification, I spoke with Mayor Ruane one time about the traffic situation over in Sanibel. They employ people seasonally to do that, you know, where they put them in some sort of uniform and they have them every, whatever it is, in certain areas, 100 yards or 500, whatever it is. And that's their job, is to move that traffic along, and it works pretty well for them. Don't know all the particulars, but it's probably worth looking into. Okay, any other public comment? Close the public comment. Town managers items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. First and foremost, let me wish all of you and again, and the staff and everyone happy and safe holiday season. Since this is our last official public meeting, unless we have a need for a special meeting.
You're here.
Councilor Adderhold, I wanted to let you know that the photographs you showed me as potential location for the arches have been sent out by email to members of the council, as well as the assistant county manager who oversees these types of projects.
And just for the record, I appreciate that, Roger. It's just a suggestion.
Actually, I use your exact words, so
Great.
so there could no confusion about that. Which brings me to two business matters. One is our recommendation to you. Typically, we do a ball drop and cupcakes on New Year's. With what's going on with COVID, I don't know that we should be encouraging people to come to one location. And with respect to the ball drop, I've been notified by the West District captain that if we decide to do that, that would require additional personnel at the expense of the town. For those two reasons, unless the council has a strong objection, I suggest we just put that along with all the other special events in abeyance until vaccine is available.
I did speak with the cupcake ladies, who said that they did not want to endanger themselves by being out, giving out cupcakes, but they had no objection if you wanted to buy some and just set them out for people to take.
Bedlam. Okay, well, that's the cupcakes. How about the ball drop?
A way, Roger, that we could do something similar virtually through the town's Facebook page or something, if somebody wants to follow along with it, just to create some sort of semblance of what was.
Sounds like Lawrence Welk to me.
Yeah, we could try to do something virtually.
It's a suggestion.
Anyone who wants to be looking at our Facebook page at 12 o'clock or 11:59, sure, but I hope they're have other better things to do.
You kidding? Champagne in the town's Facebook, come on.
Never know.
So, Mr. Mayor, with your consent, I think we'll just close in the box till next year.
Well, it's not my consent, it's the consent of the council, but, I mean, I'm in agreement with that. You know how I feel about until this COVID situation is under control and everything else, that this is the way of the world and the way of our beach right now, unfortunately.
I concur. I don't like being the one to drop the ball and dropping the ball, but it's best.
Okay, any other items?
I do. I think Chris has tried to do what he could do to rectify his situation on his permit. I don't know that chasing him down for bigger, better information is really going to be that much more successful. The short version is he missed the deadline in the code. My understanding that's because of a new property owner and a renegotiation that had to happen. My recommendation to you all is for you to allow us to go ahead and issue his a permit so he could be up and running the holiday season. If you want to contemplate a fee for that rehearing, that's of course up to you. It's $1,000. Want to waive it or not? I think that has gone on long enough, and we could have perfected it, in terms of getting all the information or better information we would have, but I just think it is what it is. It's technically a date. He missed a date.
And in all those years, excuse me, in all those years of business, that one date, one time missing it, I think in the spirit of the season, we can find it in our hearts to forgive this man for this one minor, very minor transgression. And it would be my recommendation to the council to forgive this and any associated fines.
Second. That's a motion.
That's a motion.
Second.
And I'm not opposed to that. My question just was, he filled out the application, why wasn't on the agenda?
Unfortunately, the application itself was not complete, but that's partially because the application is not really conducive to just missing a date. We're struggling with it, and we are where we are.
I'm not opposed.
Further discussion? Objection to the motion? Motion carries unanimously. Anything else, sir?
No, that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Town attorney.
Yes, just very briefly, an update on a couple of litigation matters. It's over the last several months, you've authorized me to file eviction action against the 3 vessels out on the mooring field. We've successfully served one of the 3. The 2 others are part of the problem. Is that at least with one of those vessels, the owner came in the middle of the night, tied up his vessel and disappeared. And we have, very little to no information to find out who the person is and have them properly served. But we are working on resolving one of those cases. Hope to have an answer from the property owner and settlement and have that vessel moved off the buoy and make that available for someone who's paying. And then on an unrelated note, we did receive a notice of appeal of one of our code enforcement cases involving Mr. Nacarado. We do believe that is untimely by almost a year, and we'll be moving to ask the court to dismiss it with that code enforcement appeal with prejudice, and we'll keep you posted as we move along. But that has also just recently come in between the last meeting and wanted to make of it. That's it. Happy holidays.
As to the vessels in the mooring field, the one that you cannot figure out who the owner is, can we then move that to the method that we use to get rid of derelict vessels?
We're trying. We still have to go through the due process, so we're trying to, and ultimately, what's called a pluri summons, where we place it in the local newspaper and go through the process. That's what I'm saying, is it's taking us a little bit longer than we anticipated. We actually have a skip trace on the 3rd vessel because we did have some contact information, and that trail has gone cold, unfortunately, as well. So we may have to end up with the 3rd vessel doing the same thing, which is noticed by publication.
You don't need any further authorization
No,
from us?
just keeping you, really my purpose is that we're at least hopefully going to resolve one in the near future. We're not going to necessarily get all the money that is owed us, but we're going to get a portion of it, and more importantly, free it up for someone else.
No, thank you.
Any other items, sir?
That's it. Thank you. And happy
thank you.
holidays.
Thank you very much. Okay, council members, items in the report. Let's start on this end. Bill?
Okay, one thing is, and that's your request to town, but I think on maybe behalf of all of us on the Bay Oaks project, is that I would request that we be given some kind of summary of the usage statistics that were compiled for this and the surveys that were done of people about what they want out of Bay Oaks. It's something I haven't seen. And also the internal layout of the building and the planned usage for it. If we can get that, have with us before we have the joint meeting, that would be very useful. Possible?
The layout, I know we can get you. Some of the sort of surveying information is alluded to. I don't know, but I'll check with Allison and see what we.
She's the source of it. Heard they've done surveys about people want out of Bay Oaks, and also they've tracked the usage. assume that.
Whatever information she has, we'll make available to you.
Right. And not a ream, just a summary is fine. Executive summary would be fine. The thing is, now when we talked at, I think it was the M&P about the Veterans Tribute, there was some, I suggested that we include veterans groups. I know there was some hesitation to not want to let the project get too far out of our hands. So I wonder if it's reasonable to form an ad hoc committee that includes some of the veterans groups and maybe someone from staff and council to see this through.
I like that idea. And how you select, I guess you just open up to the public and to those veterans groups and make sure it's known to everybody that they have an opportunity to participate, but I like the idea.
If there's consensus, I'd like to see that move forward, and I think we can reach out to whoever we know that are part of these groups and them organize. Should go and to figure out how big of a group we need. Okay, and the other, we did talk about restrictions or some kind of codifying what can be done on residential beach accesses. As part of the discussion we had earlier. That would be something that I wouldn't mind seeing put on an MP, just we can discuss it further and see if it's worth discussing further with.
I have no objection for being on an MMP.
That's all for me.
James?
Roger, just to follow up on this lighting for Estero Boulevard, last time we left this, before going to the Public Utility Commission, you were going to try to reach out to FP&L to see if they could come and present to council and give us an update, see if anything's changed, see if they've figured out a way to think outside the box. Any luck with that? Or I know we're getting into the holidays, but I just, before I proceed.
Locally, was more of the same sources. So I actually reached out to a third party to see if they can put me in touch with someone who's sort of higher up in the command structure of FP&L, and I'm waiting to hear back from them.
Thank you.
But I mean, if I would have brought anyone in, they would have said the same thing you previously heard. So I think you're looking for new, more aggressive type of, let's resolve this problem type of information.
And I think going up the chain at FP&L is a good idea. So I support that. I just was checking as an update because people keep asking about it, but thank you. That's all I have.
I want to apologize to Mr. Adderhold if my comments got out of
In the
the
heat of the
realm of
moment, in
discretion.
the heat of the moment, apologies accepted. Thank you very much.
And I have nothing further except to wish everyone happy holidays.
And
Well, Counselor Adderholt has stolen my thunder with the lighting question, so I don't have a lot to add to that except to wish everyone a happy holidays, and I would be remiss and at the risk of not being banished to the garage for an unforeseeable future if I don't mention the Women's Tree Festival this weekend. It's going to be very socially distant. It will be CDC compliant, and it's a great way to go and potentially donate to a lot of the 501c3s on the island and get a nice tree. I, for one, have one in there, so bid high.
Just to add, there are some really cool trees. I saw the one the garden clubs putting together, and it's.
You will be able to, I just found out, you will be able to bid online. If you're not comfortable with actually going, you'll be able to visit or view and bid online.
You have your own tree, as the mayor said the other day, or do you want to sell it a little bit? Do you want to talk a little bit about what's on that tree?
Yeah, so it's actually I chose Spurs for Autism as my charity to send the money to, and we've come up with what will be a Lazy Susan fishing tree. So it will be completely designed out of fishing poles. It will rotate. There'll be a lot of tackle. There's been some Ace Hardware and some other the goods. Some other businesses on the island have been very gracious with donating supplies. So it'll be a very fun, unique tree. Last year we did an old wooden ladder we repurposed to make out of a tree, and it actually made the paper this last week as the tree that was selected. So it's a fun event. It's a great way to give back to the community, and I encourage everyone to bid early and bid often.
Catch a big one with that tree.
Whoever wins it, I hope they catch a big one.
Good. You could do worse than the garage, by the way. There you go. Okay, well, I would just echo my fellow members' comments and say that from my family to all the families here on Fort Myers Beach and our visitors, our tourists, that wish you a very happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, whatever it is, whatever else you may celebrate this time of year. And it's certainly been a challenging year for everybody, but some things do remain the same. And those are our seasons that we celebrate. So, behalf of my family and the council here, we wish you all the happiest of holiday seasons. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Move seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? We're adjourned at 12:48. Thank you all.
Really fast for the second on that one.
And members of the audience. So we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First item on the agenda is the discussion about the Times Square clock. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion around town about the future, the fate of the clock down there. But we're going to talk about it today. So who wants to start the discussion here? Roger, do you have any comments to lead us out here on this, or? Morning.
issue initiated originally from the fact that the clock was not working. And we were trying, because of its age, to try to find a replacement part, and basically have to replace the entire workings of the entire clock, but just replace the broken part. And through a lot of research or whatever, we were finally able to find just the replacement part. But the clock was in disrepair or not working for, I don't know, a month plus. All that was going on. So I think the original thought was, by some people, at least in some of the emails that I saw, was to community support to try to, get the clock back up and running. And if necessary, if it was a cost concern, some of the community members had indicated a desire to try to support a fundraising effort to accomplish that. So then the clock started running again. Now it's morphed into the issue that the existing standalone clock that we currently have is not included in the new plan for Times Square. A different clock is included, but not that existing freestanding clock.